Pledge of Allegiance, we'd appreciate it. Just come up to the mic here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Good evening. I apologize for the delay. We had some technical difficulties. We were trying to get hooked up so that Barbara Healy could join us from home because she wasn't feeling good and wanted to leave. So I'm going to call her excused. I know she's watching us on TV, so Barbara, we hope you feel better. Nancy is also excused tonight. She had another engagement. She couldn't move the Thursday meeting to the Wednesday that we had to do for other reasons. So there'll be the 5 of us tonight. By way of announcements, the upcoming town council meetings, Tuesday, November 5th in the James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School, the JMUS All-Purpose Room. DES is holding a public hearing on a draft air permit related to the installation and operation of air pollution control equipment at Saint-Gobain Performance Plastics Corporation in Merrimack. All are invited to that. Thursday, November 7th, here in the Matthew Thornton Room, we'll have a regular town council meeting, and Thursday, November 21st, here in the Matthew Thornton Room at 7 o'clock is another regular scheduled meeting. You'll recall that in the months of November and December, we move our meeting schedule up a week in order to avoid Christmas and Thanksgiving. Eileen, did you have any other announcements?
Okay, this is important. Bedford Road will be closed to traffic on Friday, October 25th, between 9 a.m. and noon, between Catskill Road and Pearson Road, to allow for the installation of the structural steel beams on the new bridge. Please seek alternate routes. The Parks and Recreation Department invites all Merrimack families to come out and to Wasserman Park this Friday, October 25th, for the town of Merrimack's 27th annual Spooktacular Halloween Party, which features a free night of carnival games, face painting, pumpkin carving demonstrations, arts and crafts, not so scary stories, music, and the highlight of the evening are costume contest. The event runs from 5 to 8 p.m. and complete details are available on the Parks and Recreation website. I just wanted to also say that in speaking to Matt Kasparius today, he anticipates between 800 and 1,000 participants. So these events are very well attended. They do a great job. So I wanted to let you know that I had a visit from a representative from Saint-Gobain who stopped by my office. Her name is Lauren Howe, and she's the Senior Manager for Philanthropy, Community Engagement, and Crisis Communications for Saint-Gobain. So I believe someone also wrote to Tom talking about potentially setting up a community committee of some sort. I don't think that they necessarily really have the whole structure outlined, but they wanted to know if the idea behind it would be that they would hire a facilitator to come in to have discussions with whoever was on the committee. So I don't really, I think for the most part, it's kind of up to you on whether you want to do it and who will be on it and what it'll be about. You know, you may need some time to think about it, I'm not sure, but that's all I know.
So I know that they did respond to Lorraine Allen and Wendy Thomas in the letter that they sent. And in that letter, they suggested that they have in the past set up these committees with communities to help improve communications. And so I think we should definitely look forward to participating in that, seeing what it is that they have to say. I think it's interesting that they're finally, at this point, reaching out to us. And we should take any opportunity we have to be able to talk to them and see what's going on, create the dialogue. as you know, there's some debate about the different letters and responses we've gotten, and we're still evaluating and understanding how to move forward with those. But I think every avenue that we can take is a good avenue to keep communications up, and whether our letter, whether the demonstration, whatever is activating them to moving forward here in Merrimack, I think it's important that we do that. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? Bill?
I don't necessarily disagree with you, Mr. Chairman, but it kind of harkens back to our troubles back with Kinder Morgan, when we invited Kinder Morgan to come here and present to us about what they were seeking to do with the NED, and they never once came to this body to exchange ideas with us as to what they were looking to do. So I think a necessary first step that I would encourage the council to consider is to invite Saint-Gobain to come here either at the November 7th meeting or the November 21st meeting as an introductory first step to beginning the process of facilitating this community group that they seek. I think it's important in the interest of transparency that the people in the community know exactly what's being said. I think having a community forum and having select people sitting in that particular forum without having the people of our community who have been impacted this not knowing what the process is, I think would be short-sighted. So I think we should extend an invitation to Saint-Gobain to come to our town council meeting, have them on the agenda, and take the necessary first step of begin the process of developing this particular community group.
Okay, that would be certainly a good opening salvo, I guess, if you will, into starting or figuring out exactly what this program is going to be and how we're going to operate it.
I mean, they had indicated to us that they wanted us to put the group together. And I think, to be very candid with you, I don't think that's fair. I think if they really want to have a dialogue and a conversation with this community as it relates to PFOAs and groundwater and drinking water and everything that's been related to the impacts that have permeated this community, I'd like to see them sitting there. I really do.
They've been invited already, so.
Okay, well,
I mean,
there are two chairs
I
there.
know they got a letter, because I got a copy of the letter they got.
Okay.
I did not get directly what Eileen got, so I think they've reached out to the people that were presenting them, and they reached out to Eileen, and so through Eileen, they're reaching out to the town council.
I'd like to
So
see
we'll
them
move
sit here in
forward.
front of the town council and begin the conversation. I think that's the appropriate first step, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Peter?
Thank you.
Eileen, so the representative from Saint-Gobain that came to you, they intimated that they did want to meet with the council. Is that correct?
What they said was that they wanted to form this community committee, and they wanted the town council to direct what it might look like and who might be on the committee.
I mean, I just to chime in, I support what Bill has said. I think if this council has a meeting with them and they want to discuss this, I think it should be in an open forum. I think we should see what they want what they're offering and what they're asking and so forth. So I agree 100% in a public forum.
Okay. Anybody else? Lon?
Yeah, I don't have any disagreement with that as a first step. I think I would be very interested in listening to Ms. Howe from St. Gobain outline what perhaps a committee or commission or charrette or whatever you want to call it would look like. But I don't think it would be wise at this point for the council to be involved in setting the parameters and the workings of such a committee. I think there are representatives sitting here who wrote a letter to St. Gobain who generated an interest in having to meet with or having a meeting with the town manager. I agree with Bill's take on it. Let's get them in here and find out what it is they're talking about.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't have any problem with going that route. If there's any other thoughts or suggestions at this point, we'll look at putting them on a future agenda to see what the plan is. Yes, Eileen?
I just wanted to say that very recently, within the past half hour or so, I gave you a copy of a draft letter that Sarita had done a draft for a response to Saint Cobain and some of the things that they said to the council, and went through it point by point. That's very well written, and Barbara had suggested that even, I realize it's not on the agenda, but I thought that maybe if you would like a letter sent and you like the content of it, that you can give me a consensus as to whether or not you want to send that, or you can wait until a different meeting.
I think it's a great idea to send it, and I appreciate the effort that Sarita and yourself went into to fashion this based on feedback that you got from the council and knowledge that Sarita has. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? Peter?
Yeah, I've had a chance now to read the response. I think it's a very well-done response and thank you, Sarita, for that. Yeah, I do agree that we should send it. And, in light of their full-page ad they put out that I would describe as inaccurate. So, yes.
Does anybody have an objection with sending that letter out at this point, or want more time to be able to review it, or? I think we're good.
Yeah, I read the letter, and I think I got a chance to look at some of the changes that Sarita had made, Mr. Chairman, and I think the changes that she made, which itemizes point by point or counterpoints the letter that we got from Saint-Gobain, I thought was absolutely apropos and was absolutely factual and refuted the assertions that Saint-Gobain had made it in their original letter. So I have no problems with it going out, Mr. Chairman. And she's here tonight, so thank you. Great job, Sarita. Thank you.
Are we going to post this letter on our website for the folks to read, too?
Yeah, interestingly, one of the points that they made in their letter was that the town of Merrimack asserted that St. Cobain manufactures or creates PFOA
Not
and
true.
PFTE, and we never made that assertion. And so we're clearly just stating that we never said they create it. They use it in their process, is all we ever said. Just to try and clarify things. Eileen?
I don't know if we have a log jam here, but I just wanted to say that as a result of the letter that was posted in the full-page ad in the Manchester Union Leader, where the St. Cobain has claimed that the state has basically certified that they don't use PFOA anymore. And so I reached out to Clark and left him a voicemail message. And Sarita has left messages with several people at Department of Environmental Services. And I don't know if the whole department's on vacation, but we're not receiving any phone calls back. And I just would like to state that publicly. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else in your announcements? Okay. Thank you. Comments from the press and public? Anybody wishing to address the council at this point on any objects and any items in the agenda or whatever? Seeing none, we'll move along. We have no recognitions, retirements, or resignations today. Appointments, we're looking for at the annual review with the Town Center Committee. This is submitted by Town Center Committee Chair Nelson Disco per Town of Merrimack Charter, Section 6-6. At least annually, there should be an annual review with the Town Center Committee. This agenda item is to highlight the committee's significant actions, current projects, anticipated actions, and to raise any concerns the council should know or could act upon. Trash can was too far away for him to just, you know. Nelson, welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Carnegie, members of the board, members of the council. This, as you know, is our annual
Is your mic on?
event. I believe it's
It
on.
probably is. but
Maybe I'm not close enough to it. Is
That's-
that coming through
That's
okay?
better, thank you.
Okay. This is our annual review, and we've got a few things that we'd like to talk about with you tonight. I'm the chairman of the committee. Bill Cummings is with me tonight. He's here, and he's welcome to come up here and sit if he'd like. And he's also a member of the committee. The committee was charged in 2009 to try to implement the recommendations of the iTrack study, which was a study concerning making the center of town more walkable. And it made certain recommendations and set certain priorities for pieces of sidewalk and trail in the town center area to make it a more a place that would be more friendly to walkers, hikers, and people who wanted to go from business to business or schools to business, and from the town hall to the post office and places like that. This committee reports to the town manager, and we work with other town officials, residences, businesses, Conservation Commission, the Watson Park Commission, of course, the Public Works Department. The purpose is to coordinate development of a safe and inviting town center for residents and visitors to patronize local businesses and it's to patronize local businesses. Our current membership, I've listed on the chart there, is down to 5 members. Myself, Finley is our representative from the town council. Bill Wilkes is not here tonight. Karen Freed, Matt Chevenel from the SAU, Bill Cummings, who's present here, and those are the permanent members right now. We have no representative from the Chamber of Commerce. That's been open for over a year, and they just don't have the manpower to participate. We have openings for 5 members at large. We've had a big loss this year, and you are
Yes,
all
you have.
aware of it. We've lost Jackie Flood, who was a real contributor to this committee, and someone we will miss a lot. And I'm sure she'll be missed in other parts of the town as well. So that's a big blow, and I'm sorry to report that, but life has to go on. So with that in mind, I'll talk about their next big disappointment of the year as we go into talking about the Souhegan River Trail. This was our first TAP, that's Transportation Assistance Program, which was granted, which is federal money granted through the New Hampshire DOT to selected communities, to selected projects. We got this award back in 2015. We were awarded the contract, the monies for the contract to build a trail that would go from Watson Park to Wildcat Falls. And mainly, the biggest part of the construction is through this old sluiceway under Route 3 and up and across the wetlands, former wetlands, and to connecting to the trails from the high school. So that, when it got started in 2015, shortly after, there was some further studies done, and it turned out that there wasn't enough money to do the project as they saw it. And so we had, in the meantime, received another TAP award for building a sidewalk along Woodbury Street, which was highly used by students and high school students and so on. People walking down, especially when the school closes down. It's a mob scene, or not a mob scene, but a large number of people walk in the street. to get down, and that's why we had that on our list. We were awarded that, but again, as I say, the money on Sohegan River Trail turned out to be not sufficient, so we agreed to combining the two projects, combining the money from the two projects in order to continue to build the Sohegan River Trail. So that's where it stood at the end of about 1917. And since then, we've moved very slowly. The Underwood Engineering has been awarded the contract to make it happen. They have to deal with the state in a lot of bureaucratic, I would call them bureaucratic, requirements because of it being a federal project. They had to do over again some of the things, like the archaeological study was done twice, and other things like that, because now it's a new project, so they had to do it over again. They got their work done. They gave me a schedule in May of 2019. I say they gave it to me. They actually give it to our Public Works Department, who helps make this happen. And in May, they gave us a schedule for completion of, for doing their engineering work, which basically ends with going out to bid. It was going to go out to bid in March of 2020. That's next March. And the most recent view of that schedule, they say they're 2 months behind, and but they're going to make this. They're going to make the bid on time. They're going to get it out in March. That was what they told us 2 weeks ago. Since then, we received a letter, which is I think, actually, no, the letter actually came from Eileen. We've had an announcement from them that because of fiscal constraints, that somehow or other they've got too many projects in the pipeline, and they're going to have to they can only have so much money, so they're going to extend everything out. And the result of that would be that this would go out to bid in 2024. And I got to tell you, that's a blow. It really is. Is very disappointing to the committee. The committee is discouraged, as you might well imagine, to have to sit now and wait until 2024 before we advertise it. And Lord knows what can happen in between time, given our track record so far. Okay, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to ask you for some support a little later, but I'll finish with the things we've done this year that are positive. The TAP grant, as I mentioned, was for the Woodbury Street and the library north to the police station. That project is now planning to be we're going to try and apply for another grant next year to make that happen. But in other work, other connections, we've had some discussions with developers for the Longa property, which is presently on hold as they change engineering firms. But possibly that would tie in with one of our trails from Woodbury, from Watson Park up. We would like to get a walking path from Watson Park up to Twin Bridge Park through their development. And so they were talking with us, and now they've changed engineers, and so it's back to square one with that. But that's positive for us. In the area of public outreach, we've put out information booths at the Winter Carnival last year and at the July 4th Pancake Breakfast. These are always well received. We give out a lot of brochures showing our plans for the trails through to Wildcat Falls, and for the trail that will, and for the, for the other plans that we have in town. Those are maps that were originally generated as part of the iTrack program. We're planning to have a booth at the Turkey Shoot, which is put on by the library. We'll do that on the 21st. We'll have another booth there. Further, we were planning to do some video work. We've had some discussions with the school media department, and they have a couple of students who are really anxious to do this and help us out. And we were about to set up a video taking of the sluiceway and so on before, as a before condition to get that before we started construction. That's when we thought we were going to be constructing in March. Continuing, the Safe Routes to School program it continues. We had a walk to school day on October the 2nd. The capital improvement program has scheduled now a sidewalk, completing the sidewalk on O'Gara Drive through the school department along the east side of O'Gara Drive, finishing it. There's a partial sidewalk there now, and it'll bring it out to Babusick Lake Road. So that is a good thing, and the other interesting thing that that the SAU is talking about doing is putting together a sort of a master plan for the what they're calling their high school campus area. They own 4 pieces of property over there in different individual lots. They have been trying to come to a conclusion that would be acceptable to the voters as to what to do with the existing red building and the new superintendent's office, which they feel they need, and but they want to put together a sort of what Matt Chevenel called a campus plan for that area, and tie the new superintendent's office together with other office needs and make it into a welcoming center for the high school area. And we have been asked to participate in that, and that is before the school board for consideration, and will probably be included next year, perhaps with the help of a consultant to put together a master plan for a campus center of the high school. So that's a good thing. We continued to work with the NRPC on Route 3. The bicycle pedestrian path master plan is basically finished. It's got to be adopted by the planning board, but we've done our part with that. Again, I talked about the work on this video that we were planning to do. But now we come to our recommendations, and it gets to be difficult to figure where we ought to be going at this point, given our lack of success, I would say, with getting TAP funds. And holding up the Sohegan River Trail as an example, I don't think any of the committee members want to start over again with one that it's taken us 10 years to get there, and we still don't have it. And so I think that I think we'd ought to try a different approach. This would be my recommendations, not thoroughly discussed with the committee because we haven't had a meeting since all of this action happened. But the plan would be to maybe show some commitment by the town, and if it has to be done in small pieces that are affordable, I would suggest we do it that way. We do it in small pieces of it affordable each year and try and make something happen every year. It could be done through the Public Works Department, and it would be done without the constraints of geological studies and things of that nature that bog down these programs that we get through the federal funding. And I think we could do something as a town if we put our minds to it and took the task on. If we're serious, and I got to say that everybody we talk to at our handout sessions and all, the people are really in favor of this. Everybody we talk to, maybe the people who don't like it don't talk to us, but they just we just get a lot of positive feedback. Well, when are you going to do it? Oh, we're going to do it, and we're going to advertise in March. Which March? You know, we're going to March of 2024, and they'll walk away. So,
Nelson, just to touch on that note.
Yeah.
I know in the spring retreat, council retreat, we talked about, it is time to start putting all the pieces together. It can't be done at once, because obviously it's cost prohibitive in many ways, and depending on what happens and what pops up for priority work on the roads. But I know we talked about at least completing from Bedford Road down to, I think we said, it was Greeley Street on the west side of DW Highway, an uninterrupted sidewalk. So that, you see the pieces coming together like that. Right at East Chamberlain, they're gonna, from what my understanding is, they're gonna put a section in there along the road. Am I correct in that, Eileen?
it has been built. There is a sidewalk on Chamberlain Road.
No, I mean East Chamberlain DW, is that?
East Chamberlain connects to the sidewalk that's in front of the Merrimack Village Commons, or that shopping center. They've just finished it, huh?
Okay.
They've
So
just-
it's like these pieces are getting done, but I agree with you. I think that we should start to put, chip away at it. I'm 100%.
I think that's the only way we're gonna get it done. And we start with some small pieces that are affordable, and we could patch it back together. Put in the piece in front of the post office, put in the piece, I think I suggested a couple in here. The library to the police station. That's really fairly simple. If you're not constrained by the AASHTO regulations, or you're not constrained by federal regulations, you can build a usable sidewalk in that space. And you can show the people that we're making some progress and we're really serious about this whole thing. Because we've been talking a long time. Okay? The other things we'd like to, we'd like to keep what we've been doing with the capital reserve funds. And of course, those go, not only, we're focused on the town center, but there's other parts of town that could use a patch or two of sidewalk here and there. 1 year's project, just do one little piece, and gradually we'll get it done. But we're not getting it done the way we're doing it, and I think we're going to lose the enthusiasm of the committee pretty quickly. So that's that's the sum and substance of what I had to tell you, to ask you for tonight. We like the fact that you've supported us. DPW has been very supportive. The town manager has, and the whole council has been supportive, and I appreciate that. But we've got to start doing something. We've got to make some progress, even a little bit.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
Questions or comments, or
I agree with your new plan, Nelson, as far as Watson Park and the trail system. I remember when the conversation first began and they were talking numbers, I think it was $50,000 or $60,000 worth of work that, in my mind, I was anticipating. And then when we got involved with the grants and all, it was $500,000, and I was kind of shocked myself. And so I think the small portion at a time is a good idea for the
I
reasons
think we
you
can
stated
do
in
it, and if we
particular.
can do it without some of the regulations that are required with in the federal system, we can do it. I mean, all the stuff we've got almost was built without the federal help. So,
That's right.
it can be
I
done.
One of the things that was requested at the town council's retreat, at Councilor Albert's request, was to put together a plan on the costs associated with, as he described, within the urban compact from Walgreens to
Bedford Road to Greeley.
Greeley.
Bedford Road,
Really.
yeah, that's
and
a larger section than
so
we're, yeah.
it's he's put together some numbers from that. They used a lot of the interns were great this summer, and so they did a lot of that work to put together the numbers. They're pretty startlingly large, but as you say, once you have the information, you can start taking pieces apart. So I'm not really sure if anybody wants to have a presentation from Kyle as to a short presentation at some point on the information that he and the interns have done on the sidewalk project or not.
Would that be appropriate, Eileen, as preparation for budget season? To see, is there, have Kyle give a presentation, then talk about what we might be able to chip away at on this project for this upcoming year?
Yeah, I think though it would be, it just should be a short presentation on its own, so that he can talk to you about the various sections and that kind of thing. So you can see the work that was done, that you requested, and you can actually see that it was accomplished and there's numbers associated with it. And then you can, when you look at it as a whole, you can make decisions about pieces and parts. So if that's okay.
Can we ask the Town Center Committee to work with Kyle to take a look at that and see, what he has, what the interns put together, and make sure it comes up with what your ideas are, and maybe the two of you could present that to us?
We'd be delighted to. Yes,
Okay.
progress, right.
Yeah, I mean, and the entire stretch obviously is a large amount of money, and it's not something, it's like eating an elephant. You're not gonna do
Yeah,
it all at once,
right.
right?
Just
So
take one
we're gonna
bite.
make small
Take-
sections and
Take
make
the
progress, and
piece in front of the post office.
so, yeah, if you
Just
could
do that,
get
yeah.
in touch with Kyle and take a look at what, the two of you guys can put together some kind of a presentation, maybe,
I
that would come back,
would be delighted, yeah.
okay? Peter, do you have something else?
Okay.
No, thank you.
Oh, okay. Anybody else?
If I
Bill?
could, just very quickly, Mr. Chairman. Nelson, one of the things that I've learned in serving on the New Hampshire Drinking Water and Groundwater Advisory Commission, and Jamie's here, he knows exactly what I've talked about when we talk about skin in the game. We look at projects where communities have put, municipal monies into particular projects so that when they come for funding to our commission, it's a little bit more palatable. In other words, it's kind of like a split between the state and the locality. So I think potentially there's an opportunity that by us participating in this, it's something that may exist, may come down the line where we can show that we've put some skin in the game as it relates to the project, so that when you apply for grants, you'll be able to say we've made a commitment to this particular project. So
Well, in all of our grants, we've done that already.
I understand,
You
but
know, the Sahegan River, there's a grant there, and
Yeah, I
it was
know.
a safety issue, which everybody seems to have forgotten. We're talking about that sidewalk that's fallen apart. It's steel plates there approaching the bridge. That was a concern at the time we got the award, but I guess it's not.
So I
This is-
believe that project is the one that Kyle made a presentation to the 10-year plan review meeting week ago, and I echoed that, and where Executive Counselor Ted Gatsis was there, along with the DOT Commissioner. listening to input from the public on how they thought the 10-year plan should go. And we both asked for them to not push out that TAP funding
Well,
4
yeah.
years. And so we're still hopeful that maybe the 10-year plan will get reworked a little bit. I don't know how hopeful we can be, but, you know, sending in written comment to the Governor's Council would not hurt, and there's still another week or two that could be done to encourage them not to delay that grant funding for that project.
Well, I
It's
think
ready to go.
you have done that. Eileen sent them a letter.
I think what he's saying is that it would help if another body of the town, such as your committee, wrote a letter as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because this is
I can do that.
comprehensive and it includes a whole bunch of different things, but if you wanted to focus on that
Focus
in
on just that
particular.
piece.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do
That
that.
would be helpful, and
Yeah.
if there's a chance we can get that moved back into the plan, that'd be a great thing.
Yeah.
Because it does seem ridiculous to have gotten and awarded the grant and then have them push it out 4 years. That just doesn't make any sense.
Not 4 years. We were awarded this
Well, I
in
mean, we were awarded it
15.
back in 2015, I
Yeah,
understand.
2015.
But even then, it took several years
This
to
is
go through all the
now
studies and
9
stuff like
years,
that.
yeah.
We knew that.
Yeah.
But to now have it be pushed out an
Yeah.
additional 4 years
Yeah.
is just,
Yeah, I still
Bizarre.
think going forward, the right way to do this elephant is one bite at a time and try and put some town money into it every year. So you can see, look, we're building them. They're coming,
okay.
really.
We hear
Okay,
you, and
okay.
with your continued pushing and support, we'll continue hearing that as we get into budget seasons. And
I was gonna quit tonight.
no, you're not going to do that.
You are not a
We
quitter.
hope you're not.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Nelson. Appreciate it. Do we wanna move the veterans thing? If it's okay with the council, I'd like to request that we move item 1 under new business up to this time, just because it's a fairly straightforward thing, and I wouldn't want to have to keep people for an extremely long time. I appreciate the MVD is next on the agenda, but I suspect this, just from the number of slides you presented, that you're planning on taking at least your full 20 minutes, if maybe not a little bit more. So if you don't mind, we'll put new business item number 1 forward about the veterans tax credit. It shouldn't take but a few minutes. If that's okay with the council? Seeing no objections, we'll move to new business item number 1. Consideration of changes to Chapter 178, Taxation of the Merrimack Town Code. First reading, changes to the veterans exemptions. Paul, do you want to talk us through this, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Underneath Article 5, optional veteran credit, back with the town meeting a couple years ago, we voted in the optional veterans property tax credit, and that is RSA 7228B. We just need to add that language to that section of it. And it was pointed out by our assessing department that it's not an exemption, but a tax credit. So we just want to add in that section the 72:28B and the tax credit. Underneath Article 6 for property tax credit, as we talked about for total disabled veterans, increasing that credit from $2,000 to $4,000. Those are the three changes that were being made for the veterans tax credit.
Okay. Are there any questions by members of the board? Seeing none, we need a motion to move this forward to a public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, so moved, seconded, third, fourth.
All right, help me out. I heard you talking.
Peter made the motion.
Peter made a motion.
Lon
Okay, so
seconded
moved
it.
by Peter to move this item on the veterans tax credit forward to a public hearing at our next meeting.
Lon seconded it.
And Lon Wood seconded it. If there are no other comments or discussions, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed and abstaining? That passes 5-0-0. So this will move forward now as presented with a fourth increase from $2,000 to $4,000 for the permanently disabled veterans tax credit. to a public hearing at our next meeting in November
November 7th.
7th. Okay, thank you, Raquel. I appreciate
Raquel.
your patience. We could probably go on with the second one just as quickly if the town council's okay with that,
No objection, Mr. Chairman.
because it's a very similar thing discussed at our last meeting. The town council to consider the acceptance of recommended changes to Chapter 178 taxation of the Merrimack Code pursuant to Charter Article 5. And this deals with the exemptions for the abatement for solar, the solar exemption, if you will, a new Article 9. Paul, do you want to take that one too?
Yeah, I can also take this one. Basically, this is a new article, number 9. Pursuant to RSA 72:27A, the town of Merrimack has adopted a solar energy system real property tax exemption based on assessed value as follows. Solar energy system means a system which utilizes solar energy to heat or cool the interior of a building or to heat water for use in a building, which includes one or more collectors and storage containers. The term solar energy system also means system which provides electricity for a building by the use of
Voltaic.
voltaic panels. Close enough. Criteria for exemption. The exemption will be given if it follows the prescribed definition of solar energy system as described in the subsection A of this section, and all necessary applications and information have been received from the applicant. Amount of exemption. The exemption shall equal 100% of the total assessed value in a solar energy system up to a maximum of $25,000. There is one caveat for this exemption. It has to be applied for. It's not like the VET credit. This is a new exemption. It has to be applied for during the deadline dates that are set forward to apply for exemptions next year,
So by April 15th.
by April 15th each year.
It has to be reapplied each year or just on change of ownership? We'll find out by the public hearing.
By the
but
public
My
hearing,
understanding was it goes with, it stays in existence until you change ownership.
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
Right.
But not necessarily the way the legal terms go.
We did talk about this with the assessor. I can't remember what she told me.
Okay.
We'll have that answer for you definitely at the public hearing, so.
Mr. Chairman, move Chapter 178, Article 9, solar exemption to a public hearing to the next town council meeting, November 7th, 2019.
Second?
Okay. Does anybody have any comments? I do. In number 2, it talks about subsection little letter A, and I think it's referring back to number 1, A1, so just clean that up so that we're referring these are the right ways. Thank you.
Good catch.
And it's an exemption for 100% of the total assessed value up to a maximum of $25,000.
Correct.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? That passes 5-0-0. It goes to a public hearing at November 7th meeting. So if you were here for that, now we've done that part as well. And I appreciate the patience of the MVD. We'll move back to our regular schedule, which is an appointment with the Merrimack Village District, a wells update. Submitted by the Village District, Town Council will be presented with an update on the status of wells 4 and 5 treatment plant, as well as the design of the treatment plants for wells 7 and 8 and wells 2 and 3.
Keith, I owe you an apology. I got the names wrong.
I thought he was behind me.
No, I brain cramp. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Welcome, Don. Good to see you.
You too. Thanks. I don't want to download anything. No. So how do you start a slideshow?
And councilors, this is Keith Pratt, who is from Underwood Engineering.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Again, my name is Keith Pratt. I'm president of Underwood Engineers, and Underwood's been involved with the project in Merrimack Village District for the PFAS, and we wanted to come in and update you, and this was kind of a request as a team.
Can you make sure your mic is on, please?
Oh, sorry. Is that better? Again, Keith Pratt, president of Underwood Engineers. And with me, I have Don Provencher, chair of the board, and behind me, Mike Metcalf, who's really a project manager for Underwood, and also Jill Lavoie, who was here, business manager. Ron Miner couldn't make it. We do have 44 slides. We're going to try to show you 6 years of what we're doing, 3 years past, 3 years forward. But we did figure this would take about 20 minutes or so. Give you a little background, and we wanted to update you on the projects and then talk about some of the challenges and opportunities. One of the things I think it's important is that this has been a pretty significant lift for the district. There's, if you look at the asset management plan the district did in 2014, there's really about $175 million in assets, and that was in a replacement value. So there's been a lot of planning and so forth that's been done. There's been only one treatment plant in this facility. I'm not going to go through a lot of this detail, but the message here is that what we're doing right now, what the district's doing right now, is adding 20 million plus in assets to this system. So it's a very significant thing that's happening. To the one treatment plant, we're adding an addition, and then we're adding two new treatment plants, and for the PFAS and iron and manganese. But you can look in the middle of this chart, we're actually also doing other capital projects, not just the PFAS-related things. There are other things happening in the district. In fact, bids are going to be open next week for the Turkey Hill Booster Replacement Project. So there is a lot going on, and that was the message we wanted to talk, just sort of remind folks on. It's been busy. Wells 4 and 5 under construction. Okay, this is a picture actually of well 4. The buildings have been demolished. The site has been cleared. If you look at the left of this image, you can see the site for the new facility. You see well number 5 building in the background. These wells are currently offline, as we know. Here's a picture. These pictures are probably within a week. There's a gravel pad that's being set with the piping for the new treatment plant. So this one is progressing.
So as opposed to just building filtration on 4 and 5, you're actually rebuilding the entire structures and
There was really, and we'll show you some pictures, there's really not a lot that was salvageable. It's really just a well house that was just to cover the well and some chemical feed. So they're very, very small, what was there. Okay. You're looking at this picture, you actually have a structure, and I don't remember the dimensions, but it's probably 100 feet long, 40, 50 feet wide. This building's 28 feet tall at its to the eaves where the vessels go. So these are significant structures. This is close to a $5 million program just to get Wells 4 and 5 treatment facility for PFAS and the chem feeds up to to get them constructed. When you drive into well 4 and 5, when it's done, this is, you face the new treatment facility, this is what you would see. This is an image of the vessels that are being installed. I'm only showing this because the shop drawings are in process. These things are being ordered and delivered as we speak. So, the carbon vessels are coming. Well 7 and 8, we have a treatment plant there already. It was built a few years ago for iron and manganese. The exterior of the building shown on the right. The left are the vessels to treat iron and manganese. That picture of the building is the backside. That backside was designed and planned to have an addition built for something. At the time, we were actually thinking more iron and manganese potentially for maybe a possible new additional supplies. But that's where the PFAS facility is going on. So 7 and 8, we were sort of blessed with some prepared areas to allow for that. The building as it exists is shown on the right. That's actually a part plan. It's cut off a little bit, but you can see the addition is fairly significant. Probably adds another third, more space, close to a half. In that image that's highlighted blue, you see 2 large vessels. Those are going to be the carbon vessels. They're lead lag, so that there's one train to treat after the iron and manganese. To the left, you see shaded vessels. These plants are being designed to accommodate future facilities, whether it's resin or something else. So the space is being provided for even things that we're not really aware of yet. But so I wanted to point that out. And you can see on a cross section, this is actually a view of the building in profile. Again, you can on the right-hand side, which I think is interesting, is the iron and manganese vessels are shown shaded. They look pretty big in the photograph, but they really pale in comparison to the size of some of these GAC vessels that are going to be installed. And this is the space that would be available for something in the future.
Are these iron and manganese in parallel or series?
I think they're both. I think there's some redundancy, and
Yeah.
I think there's some series operation as well. Stand corrected, they're in parallel.
Okay, thank you.
Wells 2 and 3, that's why Mike's here,
That's a good idea. You can actually come forward if you don't mind.
Wells 2 and 3 is a little bit different. Here's an image of the Industrial Drive area, Premium Outlets Complex, if you're familiar with that, Continental Boulevard. Wells 2 is in this area, Well 3 is in this area. There is a study done to look at whether or not we wanted to have one treatment plant, two treatment plants, what was the most cost effective. In the end, it was decided that we'd have one treatment plant. It was more cost effective, but what that meant is we had to build a pipeline from one well to the other. And so the well house, well number 3 is the site of where the new treatment plant was going to be located. It's going to be a combined facility for 2 and 3. It's going to treat iron and manganese at well 3, and it's going to treat the PFAS from both. And that site was selected because we had some good space and we had good access with the lighted intersection at Industrial Drive. The district has asked us to look at making sure as a planning of the site that there's room for other things too, an expanded facility if needed, processes were there, and/or if they ever, if and when they decide to move their administrative spaces, that it could be accommodated. To your question, here's well number 2. These are just small buildings housing the chemical feed and the well houses. There's really not a lot to salvage there to take beneficial use of. Well number 3, same thing, just small spaces that really just house the well and the electrical systems and the chemical feed. We're going to have a whole new building here. That footprint is one of the earlier concepts. We're just finishing up preliminary design, so this gives you a feel for it, but it'll likely change a little bit. But that footprint is 100 feet by 50 feet. And that accommodates the iron and manganese on the right side of the image and the pressure vessels, PFAS treatment vessels on the left side of the image, as well as the other chemical feed facilities. Again, there's a profile view of it showing the size of those vessels. In this case, we have iron and manganese treatment shown as a horizontal vessel. That's probably going to change to match the vertical vessels we have at 7 and 8, so we have constant. Same equipment. Schedule. A master schedule was developed for this right after town meeting and right after district meeting, and this was that schedule. On the top in the blue was the preliminary design phase, which included piloting, preliminary design for 7 and 8, and preliminary designs for 2 and 3. The green schedule is well 7 and 8, design and construction. Wells 2 and 3 is shown as yellow, design and construction. You can see wells 2 and 3 has a little longer design and construction schedules because it's a little bit more complex. But if we look at where we are today, we're just finishing up our preliminary design phase, which is the blue. We will see wells 4 and 5, which is under construction now, online right around July 2020. And every year thereafter, this is part of the plan, is to have each of the other facilities come on. Wells 7 and 8 by July 2021, and wells 2 and 3 by July 2022.
Are these wells operating while you're doing this upgrade, or?
Yeah, all the wells are operating except 4 and 5. You know, they may not be operating every day or at lower levels, but the wells in your toolbox right now are 2, 3, 7, and 8. They're active. 4 and 5 are inactive. They can't be used until we get the treatment plant online.
Right.
Just to talk a little bit about some of the challenges and opportunities, we've been working close with the district on some of these. We've figured out some of them. We're still working on some of them. We've also had some opportunities that we're able to take advantage of. One of them was Bill talked about the trust fund program. There was a lot of efforts for funding. We were very successful with the trust fund to get awarded a loan and a grant. The trust fund actually awarded us a 10% grant for this project. And the Drinking Water SRF program is also involved with $6.5 million. And to get the project started immediately before the funding was in place, the district put up capital reserves, and that actually allowed the project to progress within weeks of after the annual meeting. Piloting and RSSCT. RSSCT stands for Rapid Small Scale Column Tests. We do piloting for the iron and manganese, and we do the column tests for the PFAS removal using the GAC. This is actually a pilot trailer that was installed temporarily, moved in to well number 3 site, so we could pilot for the iron and manganese. On the left-hand side, you see 4 columns. That's inside that trailer. So for a period of 7 to 10 days, maybe a little bit more, we ran that pilot with various iron and manganese medias for green sand to look for efficiencies and be able to select the most effective one. You see one of our staff here in the bottom right-hand corner who's actually taking the treated water from the pilot, putting them in jugs, packaging them up, sending them to the lab. So now we have iron and manganese-free water that we then tested through the column tests to check the efficiency of the GAC. And so that was part of that process as well. From those GAC tests and the column tests, we end up with charts like this. We have probably a dozen of these charts. I'm just showing you one. This is for one well, for one carbon. And on the y-axis, we have the concentration of PFAS leaving the column test, so that, you know, our goal has been non-detect. And and then on the x-axis, we have time. How long can this carbon last before we see something that's not non-detect? And in this particular example, for the 4 regulated PFAS compounds, we saw non-detect levels until about 18 months. This allows us to plan for how long the carbon's going to last, which carbon lasts longer, which one has better removal efficiencies.
Before you move on with that one, I think it's important for everybody to understand that when you look at this, it looks like the carbon would have lasted 18 months, and you'd probably only have, 2 parts per trillion breaking through at 24 months. The settlement agreement with Saint-Gobain for wells 4 and 5 was based on a 5-year operation and maintenance, that they funded 5 years of operation and maintenance. That was based on replacing carbon at every 2 years. And that was just looking at PFOA and PFOS. When we start looking at some of the other compounds, the other PFAS compounds, we're getting breakthrough on those other non-regulated compounds much sooner, maybe even as soon as like 10 months, or maybe even 8 months, depending, based on some of the column tests that we did. So that's why there's a little bit of a deficit there, that the settlement agreement funds for that is not quite going to cover the 5-year maintenance on those filters. So that's one of the shortfalls that we're facing on wells 4 and 5. Looks like it's probably about $1 million deficit from what was represented in the settlement agreement. Part of that was because it was based on a 30% design, and that wasn't really refined to the point that we understand it now, that it's not a 24-month breakthrough. It's going to be something sooner than that. So just wanted to point that out for everybody to know.
And and I'll talk about
Before you go on, can I ask you, on this chart, you've got a straight line between 18 and 28 months, but you only took data at 18 and at 28 months? Or-
Yeah, no, we didn't only take data at that point. We took samples at a frequency that would allow us to go back and fill in if we felt like we needed to fill in. But because of the cost of the PFAS testing, we were very just careful on when we felt we needed to go back. So there were times where we actually went back and filled in between some of the dots. And we may still do some of that depending on when we narrow in on the carbon or decide. So the samples are still sitting there, ready to be tested if we choose.
Okay, but this shows 0 at 18, and then it shows 3 at 28. It doesn't
Right.
show anything in between.
We have not tested
So
in
we don't
between.
know when it broke through.
No. We just know it was after 18, but before
Before 28.
28.
And
That's
that's a
right.
pretty big spread.
Right. And we-
Especially when you look at the slope of the next line right after it.
Right.
What, 29?
Yeah. And
Would
not
suggest that it probably broke through at 26 or 27.
it could have. It could have broken through at 27 and a half. It's
Yeah.
Right.
And again, this would just be for the lead filters, so you're going to have a lag filter that would catch whatever's coming through the lead filter, because there's 2 in series. So we probably would run the first filter to a certain point because it's still being caught in the second filter.
Right. So I'm just wondering if we really still do have a 24-month potential here. That, I mean, I'm not trying to push it, I'm just,
Right.
I'm gonna
this data doesn't tell me that, so.
No,
but
it
you
doesn't.
don't.
We just know it's between 18 and 28. And it's also, every carbon that we looked at has a different breakthrough. We saw some that were 24 months later, some that were actually shorter. And but I want to be clear, these are for the regulated compounds. We are looking at the short chains too. Those charts aren't as clean, and they don't make as much sense. And as we all probably would expect, short chains aren't as readily removed with the carbon. So we're paying attention to that. We're trying to sort it out. But these short chains are breaking through much sooner than the regulated half as much time. And at times we're seeing results that actually show sometimes it's higher than the influent concentration. So there's some stuff we're still trying to figure out with the short chains. This is one of the challenges we're working out with the carbon. But as Dawn pointed out, we have the lead leg scenarios. So a lot of it really just boils down to: is it an 18-month life? Is it an 8-month life? Which is really cost and frequency of changeouts, and that's the
Right.
stuff we're trying to figure out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, GAC conditioning, one of the things that's required with the carbon is start, when you start it up, is to rinse it. And one of the things we've learned from other systems so forth is that pH is often an issue. One of the things we actually tested for was arsenic. And not everybody in other systems has checked for arsenic. I'm pointing it out because in Merrimack's case, we're really trying to look at everything we can think of. What this shows, again, is this 4 carbons that we're looking at. And there was a test that we ran just during the conditioning period, and the pH issues and the arsenic issues do pass through. It's a conditioning period. But what happens is when you backwash the carbon initially, there's high levels of arsenic. And so that has to be conditioned. It's not put into the distribution system. It's gone to waste. The point here is that not all carbons are equal. Some carbons have more of an arsenic issue, some have less. In the case I'm showing here, this is sort of by example, but there are certain carbons that have better efficiencies removing the short and long chains. But they may not necessarily have the same conditions when it comes to the arsenic or the pH.
I'm going to back you up because maybe I wasn't paying attention, but what you're saying is you tested 4 different carbon materials. That's what these GAC 1, 2, 3, and 4 are.
Right.
And then 1A and whatnot, it's just different locations.
In the case of 1A and 2A, because we started recognizing the arsenic issue, the carbon manufacturers well, we can provide you an acid-rinsed carbon, which will remove the carbon before we remove the arsenic or reduce it before we deliver it. So if you actually look down, GAC 1 is the same carbon, GAC 1A is the same carbon, but it's acid-rinsed. So the arsenic levels were much less. It's more expensive to buy,
Yeah.
but it is an option. So the point here is, I know there's a lot of complex stuff here, but we're looking at these things, we're paying attention to these things. In the case of wells 4 and 5, that's the carbon that's being installed. So it is a low arsenic carbon.
The
and
GAC 4?
GAC 4,
Okay.
and it performs fairly well. But it still has arsenic in the initial conditioning. You can see it at 4 after 36 hours, knowing that the ambient groundwater quality standard, drinking water quality standard is going down to 5. So, the initial conditioning means that, we're close. Okay? Why is that important? This is the well site 4 and 5. You've got the railroad tracks, Front Street, you got Route Daniel Webster Highway out on this side, and you got the Merrimack River over here. So in the site and the land that's owned by the district, we have well 4, which is protected by a 400-foot protective sanitary radius. It's important to note that radius really covers most of the district's land. We have well 5, they overlap, but most of the land that the district owns is just is within the wellhead protection, well radius, 400 feet. The treatment plant's going in right between them. And we have infiltration basins that are going in there because, by gravity, that's where we can get it. So these backwash systems and these conditioning periods, we're just being very careful about what we discharge to the ground. We also have a sanitary discharge to the town sewer interceptor at the railroad track. Right now, we are approved for sanitary waste only, bathroom waste. We are hopeful that after we reach operations for a period of time, that we can prove what the backwash water contains. so that maybe we can reapply to the town to ultimately discharge to the wastewater facility, which is where we feel it's the better location. But that's why we're paying attention to a lot of this. If we have arsenic discharged conditioned water, we cannot put it into those basins. We will be trucking it off-site at a high cost. So that was, that is something that we're paying attention to. The carbons, I didn't mention it too, but the other carbon thing we're paying attention to, obviously, is the regenerable carbon, so that we don't have legacy issues with that. So we really are, when you start adding up all these things and trying to line up the perfect carbon, we got, it can be challenging. So that's one of the challenges. We're getting there, but we're still working on it. Then, after the village district, we had the new MCLs. I only point this out because we all know that they were adopted in July 19th after the annual district vote. That was important. Those are the standards. You've probably seen them. That was important only because when the original budgeting was put together, it was put together on the current standards at the time. The standard, the basis of the design for the treatment plant was one vessel to knock down the PFAS. As a result, and in that case, the blue line was, this is PFOA levels for 17 and 18. It's not the 19 data, but it shows where we were with the standard and where the well was operating. So we were essentially, we were in compliance by the standard at the time. The new rules came along. We drew a red line with the new standard for PFOA. All our wells technically are out of compliance. It's important because that changed how the treatment plants had to be built, designed and built, which meant the lag vessels were now required, which meant we had to have larger facilities, which meant we had to look at potentially additional costs, which we're estimating around $3 million. That's just another picture of 7 and 8. If you go back to the original studies, that's footprint's actually bigger than what was originally planned. So it brings that $20 million program to about $24 million, counting the $1 million that Don just mentioned with wells 4 and 5 as well, which they've covered, the district's covered with their reserves. And then the $1.5 million we estimate for each additional well adds the $4 million. That's important because we are going to be talking to the district over the next few months on how to deal with that, whether we have to come back to annual meeting or not.
We'll see.
And last thing I'm going to say, and I want to turn it over to Don for any final questions, and we do have. Okay, sure, yeah.
Sorry, if you don't mind.
See, this was a big concern of mine at village district meeting. I sat there, it was a citizen petition that was brought forward. I was wondering if, number one, if enough opportunity was given for the commissioners and the engineer to come up with a reasonable proposal. I did question also whether or not we had bonded the proper amount of money. I was also wondering why, in such this rush, it is a problem, but in this big rush, we might run into this. And so, if you've just told me tonight that that is in fact the case, and so I'm not very pleased about the whole thing. I was worried at the district meeting that if we were short, we'd be modifying our facilities and not accommodating what we had planned on in the first place. So this is not a good thing for me. I don't know how it all plays out. I mean, another bond, it's just, I don't know. It was just a poor way to go about the whole thing in the beginning, and I'm sorry. I sensed it back in this past spring. Thank you.
I guess I would say to that looking back, the Warren articles are essentially a moot point right now because we're required to treat all this water at this point.
Right, but all this work that we have done, again, I don't think the commissioners had enough skin in the game to support the proposal that came in a citizen petition. That's just me. I wouldn't have wanted us to do that for a project like this. And so it is what it is, and I guess we'll see where the next steps take us, but we're talking $4 million right out of the gate, it looks like, and I just don't think it's a good way to do business, that's all.
It definitely was a challenge, one of the challenges.
Okay. Lon?
Yeah, far be it from me to throw myself into this fight, having spent some years over at the water district.
Okay.
On the other hand, I recall discussions at the MVD where we, as commissioners and staff, engineer and other consultants, reminded ourselves of the need for caution in terms of speed. and time to get things done. And I think it's playing out. I'm not sure Finley's addressing it, but I think there's some of that in there in terms of, you know, your building designs and footprints and all that, that's fine, forever. But what it is you're going to be treating for and at what level seem to be changing almost daily. You're used to the way I say things. So I would just say, going back to the chart about evaluating the short chains, carbons that are coming along or part of a list of emerging contaminants. Caution is everything, and it's going to save us money. Thank you.
Yes, Eileen?
So, what happens if the state loses their lawsuit and they have to reevaluate and go back to what they were doing? Does that eliminate $3 million from this proposal?
I'll just answer that by saying, when we were originally tasked with this, there was a lot of discussion on how to best approach this. There was a lot of interest in Merrimack to do something. Merrimack is 1 year ahead of most communities, right? We're building a facility. Whether that's good or whether that's bad, I don't know, but that's where you are. So there's been a little bit of us sort of chasing or keeping up or trying to stay ahead of what might happen, whether we had some ideas that the standards would change. We knew that if they did, we'd have to go to a lag. We knew that it would add cost. But the timing of such things means this is where we are now. If it gets undone, it could be brought back. We could go back to the single vessels and reduce the cost. Right now, we haven't poured the concrete. Wells 4 and 5, we had to have lead leg because they're above everything. But if the choice or this lawsuit changes things, until we pour concrete, right, we can back some things down. So the answer, I think, is yes. But I think it's going to be a choice by the users on how they want to proceed. But that is one of the challenges in this term of speed and trying to be responsive that caused us to get to this point, for sure.
Pouring the concrete, you're talking about building the structure itself? Is
Yeah,
that the
I
controlling
use
factor
that
here, or-
reference to just mean that, as long as it's only a design on paper, we can change some things.
Well, yeah, but if you built the building at 50 by 100 feet and it just didn't install the extra filters or something like that, you would save a significant amount of money there.
You would, but the actual footprint of the building is a significant part of the cost. So
It
it's
is a significant part of the cost.
sure, yeah.
I would have thought an extra 20% was just going to add another 5 or 10% to the cost, not.
Yeah, I mean, if you
20%.
drop, the building goes from 100 to 100 by 50 to 100 by 40, it's a pretty significant square footage. So it does add up,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
But we can be flexible if things change again.
Well, yeah, I mean, it'd be worse to go try to add that 10 feet back on later, because that would be a lot more than just the delta
That's
costs
right.
that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So-
And where we're not adding building space inside, we're adding space outside to add on. So we're looking at both options, building the space now or at least making the space available. Last thing I wanted to mention was one of the things we've been talking about as the team, because of some of the challenges, because we're in the lead on some of these things. There are other facilities that we are learning from, but UNH will be involved with this at some level to sort of do a peer review, technical review, making sure that we're understanding the pilot results and that the process selections are being implemented properly. So there is going to be that level of check as well. I didn't know if Dawn had anything to emphasize, or I probably missed something.
No, I just, I just had a few things I wanted to touch on. We, as Keith presented, how we deal with the carbon backwash, we have to look at that very closely because it does have arsenic levels. We can choose carbons that we got to make sure that they remove the PFCs, PFAS, but we also want to make sure that they don't have high levels of arsenic because we are going to be putting those in our infiltration basins, which is one of the reasons we wanted to put it in the sewer. That was denied, and as a result, we had worked into the design that we had to have a sewer pump station built into the treatment plant. And we really didn't need a pump station because we could get gravity flow to go down to the sewer system. I sent an email over to Sarita, and Kyle and Sarita did reconsider allowing us to sewer our facilities, not the backwash water, but just, the bathrooms that we have in there with a gravity sewer. So I definitely want to thank them for that compromise. I think it's a good gesture, and it allows us the ability to sample our backwash water in the future and really know what we're dealing with, which was one of the concerns that they had about allowing it to go to the sewer plant right now. So we're glad that we got rid of that sewer pump station. You can always be a fan of gravity flow as opposed to having mechanical systems that need to be maintained. I also want to reiterate we were successful in getting a grant, $1.45 million, so that will offset, some of the increased costs. I want to thank Bill Boyd for being an advocate for us on that committee, and so that was very helpful. And I think that's all I had to say. I don't remember anything else, but I definitely appreciate the opportunity to be here in front of you, and I would like to maybe have this be more of an annual or semi-annual occurrence, that we come in and just update you with what's going on. There's going to be a lot going on in the next 3 years, and be good for all of us to kind of be on the same page.
Yep, Peter.
Don, thank you, and thanks to MVD and everybody for coming. I appreciate this. Your presentation led me to a couple of questions. I guess what I'm wondering is now, these numbers you put out here for all the projects, what was the final number that Saint-Gobain contributed to this?
They contributed to wells 4 and 5 based on the settlement agreement, and I believe the construction cost that was estimated in the settlement agreement was just a little over $4 million, 4.1, I believe. Okay. And I think they contributed $3.3 million because it left us with an $800,000 shortfall, and that was at the onset. Part of the reason of that was because there was some infrastructure that needed to be built that wasn't technically related to PFAS treatment. Yeah. So they felt that it wasn't their obligation to include that non-PFAS related cost. So that price tag originally was 4.1. Like I said, they contributed 3.3. There was some amount of money that they also contributed to the settlement, which is related to the 5 years maintenance plan. But after that 5 years, it's entirely on the obligation of MVD to fund the rest of that ongoing maintenance for our lifetimes and probably our grandkids' lifetimes. But since then, there's been some other shortfalls that have been identified because the settlement agreement was based on a 30% design, which was as far as the design was advanced at that time. So now that it's 100% designed and actually out to bid, the cost came in and we're almost essentially at about $5 million on the actual cost of everything. So when you really look at the contribution of 3.3 versus 5 million, it's about a 60%, whereas it was more of a 75% contribution initially. So that additional $1 million deficit is another additional fund that we need to, the customers need to fund.
What I'm leading up to is, now, part of the agreement was if the levels went down, the state reset the levels, they went down, and that expanded the people that got to go on public water that was paid for by Saint-Gobain. With that happening, that actually, like you folks have said here tonight, that's increased your costs. Does that figure in the deal with them at all?
No, because that's, the deal is done at this
Yeah.
point. The only thing that would reopen it, and we're actually having legal look into that right now, but if the other regulated compounds were breaking through earlier, then that would give us an opportunity to reopen the clause. But the PFAS, there's only 4 PFAS compounds that are regulated, and out of those 4, none of those are the ones that are breaking through earlier. Mm-hmm. It's the non-regulated PFAS compounds that are breaking through early. And the warrant articles, when they were presented, it was discussed that the goal of the treatment system was for non-detect for all PFAS compounds. So if we want to be true to that goal, that means we would technically need to replace the carbon media sooner based on the first short chain compound that breaks through, instead of letting those short chain compounds break through and just waiting until the PFOA and PFOS breaks through. So I think the warrant article was written so that it just said PFAS reduction, but the presentations that were made discussed about the goal of being all PFAS compounds.
I guess, you know, I read in the paper the other day, this full-page ad put out by Saint-Gobain, as we discussed. And they, you know, went on about how they want to be responsible community partners and so forth.
Right.
So maybe this is the time to revisit it with them and say, hey, you want to be a good community partner, this will go miles towards that, if you help us out with some of this deficit, because the numbers have changed.
We actually have, in fact, approached them on that and said that, you know, if this would have been known at the 30% design level, if the breakthrough of carbon would have been known, the settlement agreement might look different today than it would have when it was originally created. And the first response was that they just said, that's the settlement agreement, it's a done deal. But we kind of pushed back on that a little bit more, and they came around and said that, let's see what the final cost is, how it shakes out. There is a little bit of a contingency in that number, and if the overrun is more than that contingency, they may or may not decide to provide us with some additional funding or not. It's kind of at their option, because based on the settlement agreement as it is, it's done, you know, so.
Well, that to me would speak volumes. If they,
Absolutely.
their response to you guys to this would speak volumes.
Absolutely.
So, me personally, and if they're gonna sit here before us, that would be one of the questions that I might wanna pose to them, is,
Right.
you know, hey, you gonna help out MVD? You know, so with these changes, so, I won't keep you on that, but, the final number, on the impact as an MVD customer, how much, what are we looking at for an increase in our rates?
I actually meant to mention that, but these articles were voted by the district after presentations of what the potential rate impacts would be. And it wasn't just rate impacts that were going to be as a result of the PFAS work or the treatment plant work, but there's also just regular budget increases in other capital projects. But it was in the tune of 80% increase.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it, thank you. Thanks, guys.
Sure.
Bill, did you want to add
Yeah,
anything?
if I could, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The one thing that I haven't been able to get any information is, I know wells 4 and 5 are still shut down. Have they been tested at all for anything? PFAS, arsenic, lead, anything? I just,
Since
I don't
they
think
were shut
since
down?
they've been
since they were
down.
shut down, because it's been a long time since those wells have been functioning, so I'm curious to know.
Mike will correct me if I misspeak on this, but I do know that when we did some of our piloting in RSSCTs, we did start them.
Yes, the wells were started up.
You have to come
Microphone,
forward to
please.
a microphone, thank you.
And identify yourself for the record.
Mike Metcalf with Underwood Engineers.
Thank you.
As part of the process for doing our testing, the wells were started up again before we did the RSSCTs, because we had to get water to do those. And they hadn't been tested for, I don't know, it was like
18 months, a year?
Yeah, something like that, because they were locked out and tagged out
Right.
by DES edict, so they couldn't be used. There were actually two tests, because it was an earlier test when Saint-Gobain was intimating that the contamination was not their fault and that it came from the Longa landfill. So they had their own consultant come in, start up the wells, and there was some testing done then. So the good part about that is they proved themselves wrong.
Correct.
That wasn't where it came from, and we had some more data points. Then when we were doing our RSSCT work, we got the well started up again and took samples to see what the PFAS levels were then.
What were they? That's what I'm getting at.
They were lower than,
They were lower than, they were around I want to say,
50 or something?
I want to say 53.
Yeah.
And we were looking at PFOA mainly because that was,
Right.
that's the contaminant of concern that we had to deal with at the time, was the only one that was over. So the earlier test, I believe the highest we saw up there was 130. And we had to look at what we had then and how much, what the percentage was. And
Was this well 4 or 5?
it was a combination
was a
of wells
combo-
4 and 5.
okay.
Because that's how they're run.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
Did it concern you guys, we cited a sample they took at the St. Cobain site that went from 3,300 to 56,000 on the groundwater. Is that,
59.
69.
Thank you.
okay, sorry about that. But is that a concern of you guys, and do you know by mapping, it's well 4 or 5 right underneath them, or how's that work?
The edge of the groundwater protection area for wells 4 and 5 goes kind of right through the middle of St. Cobain's building. So everything south of that, all the way to Merrimack Commons, basically where the wells are, that's all in the Aquifer Protection District. So yeah, that's, all of that land technically is tributary to the wells. So that is a concern. PFOA levels fluctuate quite a bit seasonally. As a matter of fact, what's kind of alarming is well 2, which has been our lowest well all along. I don't think ever broke maybe 8 or 12. It hovered right around 12, 8 in that vicinity, parts per trillion. In July, it tested at 18, and in August, it tested as high as 23. And I don't think it's ever tested that high before. So there's a lot of variability. There's probably still, plumes that are coming. It's really kind of hard to tell. St. Cobain has claimed that they're not responsible for wells 2 and 3 because it's outside of that groundwater management zone. I'm not aware that groundwater management zone has anything to do with MBD at all. I think it's just related to private wells, but it's a convenient reason to cite their innocence on that. I mean, it is what it is. We're looking at possible testing, development of certain tests that can actually link the different characteristics of what comprises the PFAS compounds, and do like a fingerprint to see if we can figure out what percentage is coming from a certain source. Those protocols are being developed. Those will be very interesting to us in the future.
Well, that's what the Bar report said when they came out, that's how they were able to say, you used the word, fingerprint.
Right.
Because there was a certain chain of chemical that Saint-Gobain was using that was different than what was found in the Longa landfill, and that's how they were able to correlate that back to Saint-Gobain. So fingerprinting is really important. It's an important term that people in the community should be aware of, because that's how you're able to create a cause and effect
Right.
as to who's actually tainting wells or tainting groundwater in a given area. I mean, if the concerns with wells 2 and 3 aren't there, then why is Saint-Gobain giving private water to people whose private wells are outside the management zone? I mean, that kind of defies logic. So I really think there's more to it right now. I think Eileen wants to say something.
So there are 2 groundwater management zones. There's an outside absolute, what I refer to as a blue absolute line, and then there's an inner line. So the inner line is dotted and it's red, and it went along with the consent decree. And it was said that inner line would move as people went on public wells, public water, and the dynamic changed. And so that's what has happened, is that the groundwater management inner area is moving. But we're coming up against this blue line here, and I cannot, for the life of me, get an answer from the state of New Hampshire about what the blue line means. I believe it or not, when I asked the question of Clark, he told me that he was not a lawyer, and that I would need to hire a lawyer to give me that answer. So I asked him well, how about the Attorney General? He's a lawyer, and he signed the agreement, so I imagine he knows what that is. And he said that the Attorney General worked for the governor. So we were on our own to figure that out. So we had somebody look at that, and I'm still not really sure what it means. I don't know if, Dawn, if you can illuminate us on what actually happens when the inner groundwater management zone morphs into this larger blue zone, because we're coming right up against it. And I think what Saint-Gobain is saying is that all the rest of the wells are outside, and Clark has said this to me, all the other public wells are outside the blue zone. So they're not covered by the agreement, and he said that MVD was responsible for their own agreement, which, as Don and I have talked, has nothing to do with the other wells. It only has to do with wells 4 and 5.
Right.
So it's very, on so many levels, frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, we were never brought into the process of weighing in on any boundary groundwater management zone whatsoever. So I can't imagine that the DES would have imposed that as some kind of a restriction if we never had an opportunity to review and comment on it. Certainly had an opportunity to review it, but not to offer comment that it was effective on us. So I'm not so sure it is affected on us, but I think it only applies to private wells, you know.
He said no, it applied to public wells as well.
He did, huh?
Yes, he did. He wouldn't write it, but he said it.
That's
I asked him the question in a text, and he called me immediately and told me, yes, it does involve public wells as well. He did not write it. Oh.
That's interesting.
Yes, Bill?
Thank you. Just one other question. With the increase of $4 million on the construction costs, I know that the maintenance cost for these particular, for the GAC treatment is significant. Is there going to be an increase in the maintenance cost of these treatment facilities in light of the fact that there's an additional construction cost of $4 million being applied?
Yeah, I don't think there will, because the maintenance costs were assumed replacement of the one filter that was in place.
Right.
So we are gonna have a construction cost of the second filter, but I think the operation and maintenance should be the same, because you're still only replacing the one lead filter at a time.
Okay.
When it breaks through. So maybe that's a bit of a silver lining. Would you agree with that, sort of?
Well,
or-
the only hesitation or the only caveat I'd make to that, it has everything to do with how quickly we have to do the changeouts. And we had to make assumptions when we did the operations and maintenance costs, and I think we did it on a year. So if we're significantly less than a year on a changeout, then that will impact operating costs.
Just to clarify, the cost estimate for wells 2, 3, 7, and 8 was based on a 1-year change-out
It
of
was
media.
750,000, if I remember correctly.
It's in those orders, yeah, definitely in those orders.
The settlement agreement for 4 and 5, the operation and maintenance costs was based on 2 years.
Right.
So we already knew from that wells 4 and 5 design going into the wells 2, 3, 7, and 8 design, we weren't gonna get 2 years out of the carbon, probably only gonna get 1 year out of it. And hopefully that's what we're gonna see.
And then the other caveat is a lot of these estimates are estimates, but, you know, sometimes we're estimating based on using the wells fully 24/7, but, you know, they don't operate that way. So we really won't know until we get a year or two of operation on how these changeouts are gonna occur.
And it's the only way you're going to get the data. You got to run it.
Gotta run it. And
You
we have
gotta run
some
it.
estimates with these column tests, but they are just lab tests.
By the way, Don, I do agree with you. This is my 9th year sitting here, which is a privilege. Certainly look forward to future communications from MBD as you folks move forward with your projects. I don't want to use my colleagues' names in vain, but I think I would believe there'd be a sentiment that we would enjoy seeing you folks here to talk about what you're doing and finding ways that we can work with each other to continue to focus on the task at hand, which is making sure the community has access to clean potable water.
Thanks.
Thank you,
We'll
Mr.
be
Chairman.
pleased to attend. I just want to mention one thing, the public hearing on November 5th about the air permit. Isn't there a secondary piece to that as well that deals with an update on investigations?
Correct.
Yeah, I was going to ask that
Yeah.
when Tom mentioned that, because all the discussions that I have had with Clark when he was speaking to me said that that it would, I could pick three. There were three topics. One was health concerns, one was the public hearing, and the other one had to do with, a presentation on the remediation. And so I said, well, let's start with the public hearing and the topic of the remediation, which is, I believe is what you're talking about. I don't know if they've pulled that or not. I wouldn't know how to verify that or.
I did get
at
a
this
public
point.
notice from, I'm on a couple DES email lists, and I did get a public notice that said it was going to be an update on I thought it was the investigations that have been.
And remediation, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm, yeah.
in southern New Hampshire.
Oh, good,
So,
that's great.
yeah, so
but
it's
there
kind of
will-
a two-part meeting.
Yeah,
public
and there'll
hearing.
be another meeting where they talk about health concerns.
Okay.
DHHS will be coming here to talk about that.
And we have that scheduled, is that right?
We have it scheduled, but I don't remember off the top of my head what
Okay.
date it is, but we'll make sure we post it, and we decided it at the council decided at the last council meeting what it would be, but it has to be at the high school instead, because after we figured out that we wanted it, the school said it's not available, so anyway, we'll get that all posted. Thank you.
I do want to say that I'm happy to see St. Gobain propose a community engagement group. I would certainly like, as far as I'm concerned, to be in MVD to have a seat on that. We haven't discussed this with the commissioners yet, but I'm just speaking from my own opinion. I think that would be important, be a good way to just, they might not be aware of a lot of these issues that, we're looking at in terms of the settlement agreement and things like that. So it'd be a good civil way to put those items on the table. Certainly we explain that in letters to them, but, this will be good that we're hopefully all meeting and talking about these things.
Yes.
I didn't happen to mention this, but when the lady from St. Gobain came here, she just wanted to drop off her card, but I kind of pulled her into
Pigeonholed
my
her, I hope,
office
yeah.
and we had a chat, and I said to her exactly what Peter had said about if you're going to if you're going to take responsibility for wells 4 and 5, you need to take responsibility, and you can't be sticking on I gotcha kind of a thing. If you're taking responsibility, you need to pay for it. And I said, it's going to cost at least $800,000 more.
Right.
So she said to me, can I go back and tell St. Gobain? And I said, I thought that's who I was talking to. Yes, it was. This isn't a secret,
So just a note on that responsibility, we're looking into finding the facts on this, but last winter, some members of MVD, including myself, Ron, Mike, and some other, we all went and toured the Hoosick Falls treatment plant. And kind of surprising to us, the operators told us that they don't actually operate the plant. St. Gobain's engineers operate the plant. They switch out the carbon media. They built the plant at their cost, all of it. And this was back in 2016, and they've been changing the media ever since at their cost. So it's not looking like it's a level playing field by any means. Now, we are trying to vet this information for real. We're having our legal team kind of look at that, and they're going to come back to us and tell us what the truth is on that. And if that is the case, again, there's a question of why a certain, attention on that site, that we're getting a different attention on our site. So there's some questions out there that I have, you know, so maybe this community engagement
There's
thing
several
is-
questions of
yeah.
that sort floating around with respect to the way this whole project is going, and that's where I think this committee to discuss things would help. I think
Right.
there's also efforts ongoing to try and get some more assistance, whether we're hearing from DES or not, but through the governor's office and DES, and I believe they're going to be coming down to have some discussions with MVD in the town and whatnot to understand where we're at and where we're moving forward
Right.
with on the water things. So
Good.
I'm looking forward to that, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. I know you've submitted some questions for the governor to try and understand
did.
how this is all playing out.
Yeah,
And my understanding is that's moving forward.
good.
So that'll be good news. Are there any other questions relative to the wells and well treatment at MVD? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming. We do apologize and look
Thank you.
forward to future
Apologize
Thank
for
you.
updates.
our overrun on the 20 minutes.
Was that
but-
20 minutes?
Yeah, it was.
I just had
Right
one
on
other
20.
thing. I just wanted to make a correction, but for the record, I think Nelson had mentioned that Underwood was doing a trail project. We have our hands full with a water project. I'm not sure that was us.
Is that Keach? Keach North?
All right, well,
It's an offline conversation.
if we're doing it, I wasn't aware of it.
I'm sure you guys are very busy, so we'll
That's okay.
get to working on something.
Yeah. Done.
Thany you very much.
All right, guys.
Thank you, have a good night.
Threw them right under the bus there. Cold. Maybe we haven't paid for oil yet this week.
I saw him. There it goes. Okay.
Okay. We're going to move right along. We have two public hearings scheduled for tonight. The first one is the public hearing for the driving under the influence patrols, a grant acceptance for the Merrimack Police Department submitted by Captain Eric Marquis. Town Council will hold a public hearing to consider the acceptance and expenditure of a grant, in the amount of $12,194, made available through the New Hampshire Office of Highway Safety for the Merrimack Police Department for, quote, driving under the influence patrols, unquote, pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15.
Oh, no problem.
Absolutely.
Good
Thank you.
evening, and I appreciate you having me here tonight. So, yeah, the first grant we're dealing with is the Driving Under the Influence grant. This year's award is $12,194, which would fund 45 4-hour patrols to focus on DWI detection. The patrols will generally be held Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, as well as holidays and some special events. It would run between the hours of 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. Last year, our award was $7,970. We had 29 patrols, 179 vehicles were stopped, issued 159 warnings, 18 summonses, and had 9 arrests.
So what's the difference between a summons and an arrest? A summons is a future appearance?
Summons,
or-
like a speeding ticket, is a summons level. It's a violation level. Arrest would be mostly misdemeanor and above.
Peter?
Captain, the DUI patrols, one of the things I'm concerned about is, and I mentioned it to the chief, is I think we've got it down to a science on our driving under the influence of alcohol.
Yep.
But it's the drug issue now with the heroin, the fentanyl, the meth, and everything else. Can you explain to me what the PD's doing to address this? Are they starting to take this into account and so forth?
I think we have been for quite a while now. We send a lot of our officers to a specific class. It's a 2-day class, Advanced Roadside Impaired Driving Enforcement, which basically focuses more on drug driving as opposed to alcohol. So that gives them a little bit more to deal with when they're roadside. So,
Now, how would you, if you brought a driver in under the influence, let's say you suspected fentanyl or something, they don't offer a breath test, or what's the procedure for that?
well, once we get them back to the station, I mean, you've established that they're impaired. So at that point, if they agree to testing, the easiest thing is just to basically, you put them on the intox machine first, rule out alcohol. Then after that, you can take them to, I mean, if they're below the 08, you can take them to the hospital, and the hospital can draw blood, and they can tell you exactly what's in the blood. That's the easiest thing to do.
Now, do you guys, you folks at the PD foresee bringing anybody else through the drug recognition expert training?
Probably not. We have one person certified right now, but we don't do very many evaluations, just because when you get to that point, it's just a lot easier to just take them to the hospital and get blood so you can tell them exactly what's in their blood, as opposed to the physical cues that this the evaluator would look at. It's a lot more difficult to come to that conclusion, where your lab results, your blood's going to tell you exactly what's in their system. So.
All right, thank you.
Do you have to arrest them to be able to take them to the hospital, or what?
Yes. Yep, you have to arrest them, and then you have to read ALS. They have to agree to the testing to be able to draw blood.
Okay. Any other questions? We should open the public hearing at 9:04. If anybody has any questions or comments on the Merrimack DUI Patrol Grant for the amount of $12,194, please come and share your opinion. Going once, twice. We'll close the hearing at 9:05 and move forward. Anybody want to?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the town council accept and expend a grant in the amount of $12,194 made available through the New Hampshire Office of Highway Safety for the Merrimack Police Department for driving under the influence patrols pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15. Furthermore, that the town manager or her proxy be authorized to sign any paperwork necessary to perfect and accept the grant and expend the grant.
Motion made by Bill and seconded by Lon Woods. Any other comments? How much was the grant last year?
$7,970.
So it's up quite a bit.
Mhm.
Any particular reason why it's up?
The state determines that, so it has to do with the amount of money that they have, the amount of agencies that qualify for it, and then the problems that the town has, or city has, and then they kind of divide it up in that fashion.
Does the opioid crisis factor into this, you suppose? Driving under the influence is not just alcohol, it's also any other,
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know what the answer to that is.
Okay. Just curious. If there's no other questions, we'll call a vote on the motion to accept the grant. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? That passes 5-0-0. Which brings you to number 2. And you're still here with us. I lost my page. So this is to accept a grant from the New Hampshire Office of Highway Safety for sustained traffic enforcement patrols in the amount of $10,296 for all those same RSAs and articles of the charter. So you want to just give us a summary of this one too, please?
Yep, so the Sustained Traffic Enforcement Patrols, also known as STEP, as you said, $10,296, which would fund 38 4-hour patrols that would focus on known trouble areas during commuting hours, 7 to 11 a.m. or 3 to 7 p.m., which could include traffic control device violations, speeding violations, school bus violations, etc. So there's a lot of different areas that we would focus on, and those change on a regular basis. Last year, our grant was for $9,595. We did 32 patrols, stopped 320 vehicles, issued 270 warnings, 66 summonses, and we had 5 arrests for that grant.
Now, this is different than the DUI because it's different hours of the day, but basically, if you're out there looking at traffic, you're looking at the same thing, right? You're looking at driving under the influence types of issues as well as speeding or people going by. I mean, when you're out there looking at issues, you're looking at all the issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think driving under the influence is not quite as much of a problem during those hours.
Right.
But you're still, if you have contact with the operator and realize that that's an issue, you're gonna pursue it, so for sure.
Right, so it's basically putting police out on the streets with the distinct intent to be monitoring traffic and wondering what's going on there, as opposed to
Focusing-
being called off for other calls
Yeah,
or.
during commuting hours, trying to make those times safer, because you have such a heavy traffic volume, so.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Peter? and
Kevin,
Bill and Finley?
I don't know if it falls under under what you're looking at, the violations between the distracted driving and so forth, but you're gonna be out there, your officer's gonna be out there between 3 and 7 PM, and maybe you could add one violation type of fence on there, that being blocking the intersections at Continental Boulevard.
Yep.
That's one of the, are you talking about Greeley and Amherst?
Yeah.
we
Yes,
frequently block
Executive
it.
Park.
That's one of the issues that we used the money for last year, was that specific problem.
Yeah,
So,
that'd be awesome. Thank you.
So any traffic violations
Yep.
you'll be looking at, right?
yes.
Bill, you had a question?
Just, in talking with people, that they've noticed that there's been more of, it's anecdotal, more of an increase of people not paying attention when the school buses stopped, and I'm assuming that there'll be some added attention to that particular.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We also spent money on that last year. A lot of the details focused on school bus violations.
Do you know how many school bus violations you had from last year
I
off?
don't.
Fair enough. Okay.
No, but
thank
you're
you.
actually following buses and unmarked cars so that you can
Yes.
observe situations, and
Yep,
you
and
know
we'll
some
profile the
specific
cars.
areas that tend to have more problems than others based
Absolutely.
on,
Yeah.
that's a good thing. In fact, it's hitting the news that seems to be almost a national problem, that people are paying less attention to school bus stop signs, and
I would agree.
they're all over the
We
place. It's
certainly
not
have
a,
the problem, for
it's
sure.
not a Merrimack problem. It's, we seem to have lost our consciousness as far as driving is concerned, and courtesy
Yes.
with respect to buses and stuff. Finley, you had a question?
Actually, this is my annual thing.
Oh,
I,
let me sit back.
The first grant, I'm all on board. I mean, you know, anybody driving under the influence and raising Cain on our highways. My big concern with this one and the next couple that will be coming up is that the grant, and I'm imagining it's probably the same this year because I think it's kind of a boilerplate almost, is the state was actually, they're requiring a stronger enforcement. And so instead of our numbers, I had requested some information on what our normal summons rate is versus when we have these grants.
From Deputy
And-
LeBake?
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, and this one we have is for 4 years, and it was split right down the middle. It was pretty much even on 2 of the years. The other 2 years was about double.
Yes.
The grants did always require that we had a stronger enforcement, and so that would naturally cause that to happen. And for these, I mean, if somebody's driving like a maniac, I have no problem with a summons or whatever right there, but I'd rather these type of things, the ones up, the distracted driving, all that, to, as often as possible, be used as an educational tool. And if we're falling in line with what we normally give for summonses, I have no beef with that. I just don't want all of a sudden to come down like a ton of bricks and look like the community we're not. That's always my thing, so I generally vote against these grants, and I will be doing it tonight,
Okay.
for those reasons. Are we using unmarked cars as well? That's another concern of mine, because I don't enjoy that at all myself.
Yes. on
Yeah,
occa-
see, and
On
that's-
occasion.
because, and we do it on Continental Boulevard, it's the sneaky thing, and if it's, you know, if you have to sneak up to see it, you know, again, it's just me. I'm not in law enforcement, so anyhow.
Well, I will say that
I-
the last 4 years, the numbers that you have, 2 of the years, like you said, I mean, it was right at 10%, I think, summons to warning ratio. 2 of the years did spike when we had 23% and 19.6%, which was a higher rate. I can't give you an answer as to why that happened,
Sure.
but,
And what it's been a few years since I had received these numbers, because I used to ask for them annually, because we used to be 6 to 8% was our summons rate out of traffic violation stops, or I don't know if I'm using the proper terms, but but they always were jumping when we would do these grants, and it's, I felt like I owed you an explanation, because I don't want you to sit there and say, why did he do that, and
I
not know.
appreciate
but-
that.
Okay, thanks.
Peter?
In Finley, I agree with you, as far as, I wouldn't wanna see all of a sudden this big crunch and pressure on the drivers in Merrimack and, you know, leave a bad impression with people. But I will say this, over the years, and I guess, having worked with, everybody at MPD for a number of years, I felt like, and the statistics show it, they've always used good discretion. I mean, from the ratio of summonses to warnings way outweigh the summons, and I think it's always been good discretion. Regarding the unmarked vehicle, I don't think it's sneaky. I think it's a reality of, I've drove around for years in a marked vehicle, and it's amazing how well people drive when they see your car. But then when you drive in an unmarked vehicle, boy, it's amazing how they change. Not everybody, some. So that's where I come from on that. Thank you.
Well, I have to admit to going 30 miles an hour in Merrimack when there's a marked car following me around. I won't admit to anything else, but you can read between the lines. And I understand where you're coming from, Finley, but there's always a problem. You're putting more officer time out on the streets. And so you're going to get more warnings and more summonses. And the question is, does that ratio need to change? Or is it changing because they feel like, well, I'm working on a grant, I need to be doing something to prove that
Right.
this is done good? And we're hoping that
debatable.
you get the message from the council that we don't really want to see a spike in summonses
Right.
as much as we want to see them training and teaching the people to
Yep. I would
behave
agree.
and be careful.
I would agree. That's the most important thing.
Okay. Are there any other comments on the STEP grant proposal? Did we open the public
You did
hearing?
not, Mr.
We
Chairman.
did not. We need to open a public hearing for the STEP grant proposal at 9:15. And ask anybody that wants to add into the conversation to come forward, please. Seeing no rush to this mics, we'll close the public hearing we'll call it 9:15 and a half.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the town council accept and expend a grant in the amount of $10,296 made available through the New Hampshire Office of Highway Safety for the Merrimack Police Department for sustained traffic enforcement patrols, STEP, pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-50, and furthermore, that the town manager or proxy be authorized to sign any paperwork necessary to accept and expend said grant money.
Second.
Moved by Bill and seconded by Peter. If there's no other comments, we'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? One. And any abstaining? Zero. So it's 4-1-0 with Finley in opposition. Which brings us back to you, I believe.
No legislative updates, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we do need to do a break here. So if you give us just a few minutes, we'll go
Absolutely.
through and do our legislative updates from state reps. At this point, anybody that wants to come, why don't you all come forward and,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
I just have one small announcement. I made a mistake when I was talking about the engineering firm that we're dealing with. It's Quantum Engineering.
Okay.
And
not Underwood.
That's okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Underwood people who were here. I apologize for that. Okay?
All right. Thank you, Nelson.
Thank you, Nelson.
You can go first. Well, I'm on the left and you're on the right. Well, you can go first.
Oh, we can handle this.
No, from where they're sitting.
From our perspective, you're on the right and she's on the
Oh,
left, so
okay, then we're good.
we're all good.
And the green light's on?
Yep.
You can hear? So good evening, I'm up past my bedtime, so I have a new appreciation for you being up here twice a month in these late meetings. So for the record, I'm Janine Nodder. I'm the Deputy Republican Floor Leader, and I'm serving my 5th term in the New Hampshire House of Representatives. The Republican leader is Dick Hinch, who's also of Merrimack, and he asked me to send his regrets that he's not here tonight, but he had a prior commitment. I have 6 items to go through. The first one is, it may interest you to know that last week, a survey organization, Morning Consult, reported that our governor, Christopher T. Sununu, is ranked the 5th most popular governor in the country. Last month's job report from Employment Security noted that there were 850 new jobs created in September. That's 8,450 jobs since 2018. Republicans held the majority in the Concord for the 2 terms prior to this term. These job numbers are the result of the Republicans' commitment to creating a business environment that fostered employment opportunities. Despite overwhelming positive results of changes like the business tax cuts, we've had to fend off attempts to roll back the successful changes made, like we saw in the Democrats' proposed budget. So I have an exhibit here, and I'm going to hold it up so the camera can see it. This is the pieces of the budget that we voted on April 11th. And I also have the roll call votes with me. The breakdown shows that 0 Republicans voted for this. So we voted against an income tax, capital gains tax, business tax rate freeze, and you can keep these if you want them for the record. I'll put them aside. I also printed out the roll call votes for you. As I said, for House Bill 1 and House Bill 2. House Bill 1 is the appropriations, and House Bill 2 was the policy changes that allowed the appropriations in House Bill 1. If you want these, I'll leave these for you too. They're the yays and the yays. We did pick up one Democrat to vote with us on HB 1, a young rep from Conway. And then in House Bill 2, we had 2, the same young one, what's his name? Harrison Kanzler, and then Charlie St. Clair. I'm not sure where he's from. Oh, you know him?
Laconia.
Okay. And the last time I was here, I talked about the compromise budget, so you already have that on record, so I'll move on. This is my Exhibit B. This is a list of 653 legislative services requests. We call them LSRs. So they'll become the bills that are heard in the various committees. I may have made an error in my listing the anti-gun bills the last time I was here. I thought they were numbered 1 through 5 on the list of LSRs, but it was 1 through 3. But since then, there's 8 more. So 5 more. So there's 8. There's 8 anti-Second Amendment bills. And I think I alluded to the fact that was this one sponsor for 5. Well, she's only a sponsor for 3, so that was Catherine Rogers. In keeping with my promise to the voters of Merrimack, I will oppose all the anti-Second Amendment bills. Exhibit C, I know it's really tiny, but these are the anti-Second Amendment gun-grabbing bills. Several of the LSRs being introduced are all anti-business. It would be a shame to see these job opportunities squashed by new policies. Where is my Exhibit D? Oh, Exhibit D, here we go. You'll notice the file folder has the Arc de Triomphe. I know, but I was thinking of it in French, L'Arc de Triomphe. The Eiffel Tower. Now, you may recall the riots that were being held in France. That was all for the carbon tax. So when we had the carbon, I'm on the subcommittee for the carbon tax. I put it all in this file. I'm going to write. I write better than I can speak off the top of my head.
So,
The hearing-
Janine, just for a brief, carbon tax, what are you talking about with the carbon tax?
I'll tell you. The hearing for this bill was held last winter. On the day of the executive session, when the committee would vote on whether to recommend passage or kill it, the majority party surprised us with a motion to retain. Now, this is the file from the hearing. In it, I have testimony on why this is a bad bill. Now, it would take me quite a while to go through every item on the list, but the bottom line is this. It's a tax on our carbon use. It would cost $800 million a year, dramatically raising energy and fuel prices and having a profound negative impact on our state's economy. And for what? In addition to what I have in this file, here's a photo that I took at the American Legislators Exchange Council. The global impact of eliminating carbon dioxide emissions from New Hampshire would be 0.003 degrees Celsius temperature mitigation by 2050 and 0.005 degrees Celsius temperature by 2100. The carbon tax would have almost zero effect on global warming. So it's an attempt to combat global warming. The supporters of the carbon tax want to make energy sources like natural gas, oil, or coal so expensive that no one will be able to afford to use it. So I have all this testimony. I can come back and talk about it again next time, and if you want.
We appreciate the fact that you're watching that for us in the State House so that we don't have to watch it here at the town council level.
Yeah.
And I know yes, thank you.
Okay. Well, obviously I'll be opposing it. And then my last item, I have a list of some of the LSRs that we pulled off that giant list. And these are ones that will hurt small businesses, grow government, or lead to higher taxes and fees. For example, prohibiting the use of styrofoam products will increase the cost of doing business, which in turn is passed on to the consumer. The same could be said for a bill that establishes a fee for single-use carry-out bags or single-use plastics. There's going to be a bill to tax certain electronic devices, and one proposing a new state broad-based tax. And there was a bill earlier this year that the House passed, but the Senate held on to it, that I would be a criminal today holding this. This would be contraband. And I'm going to conclude with a quote from the late President Calvin Coolidge. Coolidge. A government which lays taxes not required by urgent public necessity and sound public policy is not a protector of liberty, but an instrument of tyranny. It condemns the citizen to servitude. That's all.
Thank you.
Quick question for
Oh,
Janine.
go
I
ahead.
apologize,
Yeah,
Representative.
yeah, no, that's fine.
Janine, what committees do you serve on up in Concord?
Science, technology, and energy. And I'm also, we used to call it the whip, but they changed the title to deputy floor leader. And I'm Al Baldessaro of Londonderry is the floor leader. So basically, I do all the work and he gets all the credit. That's our joke.
So is science and tech going to be seeing a revisit of Reggie at all in the near future, do you think?
Always.
Always?
Yes.
That's never going away?
No,
Okay.
but we'll keep fighting it. I believe I was the prime sponsor, at least more than once, to get rid of Reggie. Reggie's a tax.
Okay.
It's an energy tax. We also have a lot of subsidies. But wow, to my shock, I didn't think we had the votes to sustain the veto on the biomass subsidies, and when that veto was sustained, I nearly fell off my seat. I said, "What? Are you kidding?" I think I talked about that last time I was here.
You did.
Right. So the RPS program, another subsidy. So we have all these different subsidies, and there's all these different little fees and taxes, and we always get told, it's only the price of a cup of coffee. It's only the price of coffee. Well, how many gallons of coffee do we have? I mean, and so the only way to combat these is to chip away a little at a time. And then, the opposition will say, yeah, but it's just a cup of coffee. Why would you cut that? I'm like, well, I'll tell you what.
Because this is my 20th cup of coffee.
Right. My mailbox is in the bottom corner. Why don't you all just, take a little money out of your pocket every day and put it in my mailbox? Because you won't miss it. It's just a little bit. But in the meanwhile, I'm going to rake it up, but I'm going to be able to buy myself some gallons of coffee.
Anyway, thank you for serving, Janine. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Want me to leave you these?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Okay. All except for the file folder, because I need that.
Okay. Great.
Janine, are you leaving right now? Because I had a question for both of you, but I didn't want Wendy to complete her presentation.
Sure.
I don't mind, if you don't mind.
You want me to stay here?
Sure.
Wherever you're comfortable.
Wherever you come.
First of all, the L'Arc de Triomphe is the square one. It's not the Eiffel Tower.
I know.
Okay. And just to clear up some misinformation, there was never a straw ban. That's a talking point that was used against the bill. There were always straws available in a restaurant or something if you asked for it. It's just that they weren't supplied automatically. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit that advocates for the disabled community. I would never vote for a bill that banned straws. Disabled people need straws. So that's misinformation. I want to give you some updates on things that have been going on. This is the update I'm going to be giving to the PFAS Commission that I sit on with Councilor Harrington, Representative Rung, and Representative Murphy. At the Merrimack townwide protest, we had over 60 people. It went for 2 hours. I cleared with all of the local businesses. There were some businesses that didn't want us to park in their parking lots, and I told people, made sure the word got out. There were Shaw's and the Depot Farm. Shaw's let us park there, and then we ran shuttles up, and Depot Farm let us drop people off, and then they walked up. We were complimented by the Merrimack Police Department as well as the security from Saint-Gobain on what a well-run, organized, and respectful protest it was. We sent a letter with 6 concerns for Merrimack. As a direct result of that letter, and you discussed it earlier, Saint-Gobain wants to start a community advisory committee. They have a similar, not the same, but a similar committee over at Hoosick's Falls. And I really encourage you to consider sending at least somebody to this committee, because this is the negotiation table. This is where we can come up and talk to Saint-Gobain and about our concerns. One of them is we would like to see the entire town on bottled water, not just a select few. We also, as you know, 133 families locally got placed on bottled water. My family is one of them. We are now on bottled water indefinitely. That's a lot of plastic. A lot of people are concerned about that. I'm concerned about that as well. Saint-Gobain should be investing in a recycling program for the town of Merrimack. I don't know if that means paying for extra people at the transfer station. I would like to see receptacles around town so people, like, there used to be one near the garage where people could drop off tin cans, something like that. I mean, they're creating this problem. We didn't ask for it. We don't deserve it. They need to step up and take control of it. The federal delegation down in Washington is aware of this advisory council, and they're going to be keeping their eyes on it. They're going to be asking for regular updates, as well as Senator Chandley. She's going to be, I don't think she's going to be involved, but she wants regular updates on it. There's a private, I live in an older neighborhood. It's on the other side of Wildcat Falls, and so it used to be summer cottages. So in the older part of our neighborhood, we're all on private wells. There's one woman in our neighborhood who her well ran dry, and so she put in a new well at a cost of $8,000, had it tested for PFAS chemicals. It's too contaminated to use, so she cannot use this well. So, but she was not one of the families that was identified for the bottled water. So I worked with a couple of town leaders. I worked with this woman, got her in contact with DES. She's now on the list for bottled water, which means that if anyone has a private well, you have to get it tested. If you can show that it's contaminated, DES, through Saint-Gobain, will most likely, I can't guarantee you, but most likely put you on bottled water. And as you know, I've always been an advocate for the private wells. I'm the one that keeps talking about them because we're getting the short end of the stick. Public water is getting filtered, our private wells aren't. I also sit on the Unprotected Water Sources Committee. We've met a couple times now, and we're hearing from different agencies around the state of New Hampshire for how to protect our water supplies. And we're not just talking about like the MVD water, we're talking about lakes, unprotected lakes. So we're going to be hearing, we heard today from the New Hampshire Lakes Association, as well as the Manchester Water Association, for lack of a better name. And there are plans in place, and they've got some best practices that we're looking at. We're going to be hearing from business developers because there's something called a bowling alley development on lakes that's causing a problem, and what's happening is people are buying property and then they're clear cutting down to the lake. So when it rains, that's all runoff that goes into the lake. So we're hearing about that. We're hearing about, we're going to be hearing from the real estate groups. We're asking water leaders, for lack of a different title, from neighboring states, because we're thinking about starting a coalition for best practices for protecting unprotected water sources. And we're also calling in a biosolids expert. So if you have any questions about protecting water sources, you can send them to me, and I will bring them to the committee.
Do you have an immediate question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, is this a legislative committee?
It is.
Oh, okay.
It
Thank
is.
you.
Yes, I got appointed to it. I got appointed to the PFAS one as well. I've spoken about the Merrimack to school, Medicaid to school situation through you've heard it through the school board. They called all of us in to are you aware of that situation? Do you know what that is? Okay.
No.
So there was a new DHHS emergency ruling that removed specific wording from the bill that said practitioners of the arts. And what it meant was that if your child has an IEP, you go to the IEP meeting, and if your child, for example, if the speech pathologist in the school says your child needs speech pathology services, or any other services, the parent now needs to make an appointment, go to the doctor, have the doctor sign off on this, bring it back to the school. Meanwhile, the child is getting resources. They're getting the services. They're not holding it up. But unless that doctor signs it, the school does not get reimbursed by Medicaid. So the school board anticipates a loss of between $500,000 and $800,000 because of this ruling. Because a lot of parents can't take the time off. And I spoke to an advocate recently who went to a hearing on this, and she said that it's going to have to be done every month. What working parent can take a day off every month to bring their kid to the doctor, to get it signed? And, you know, I've worked with a lot of pediatricians. I don't know that pediatricians have the qualifications to say that they need speech therapy or what kinds of therapy. So there is, I'm working with a senator. I actually have a bill an LSR, in place to codify into law that terminology, practitioners of the arts. I didn't think I was the proper person to bring. It's going to be a big bill. There's going to be a big fight. I didn't think I was the right person, so I spoke to one of the senators, and so I'm going to be working with him. He's going to put it in. He's on the Senate Educational Committee. So I'm going to be working with him on his bill, and I'll be pulling my bill on that one. We've got to do a good job because my friends on the other side of the aisle are putting in a bill to codify the DHHS law, or DHH emergency ruling. So they're trying to make that the law. So that one's going to be a struggle. But if we don't put it into law, Merrimack could lose up to $800,000 in Medicaid reimbursement for that. I've been, this week there's been a lot of focus in Concord on the mental health situations in New Hampshire. Yesterday I attended the Children's Behavioral Health Symposium. There's a lot of really good resources out there for kids. 1 in 5 children in New Hampshire have mental health illnesses, which seems really, I mean, that's, something is going on. Today, I attended the 10-year mental health bill continuing education, where Chief Justice John Broderick spoke, and he's got a very compelling story about his son. So the 10-year plan is robust. It looks like it's got good resources for adults. And again, in New Hampshire, we have 21% of our population has mental health issues in New Hampshire. They really stressed that mental illness is just that. It's an illness. It's not a weakness. It's not a character flaw. And it's just really compelling to hear some of these stories and to see the work that's being done. I mean, they're doing great things out there. Last week, Thornton's Ferry School was up at the Concord State House, and I was able to catch both classes of them. Thornton's Ferry School, that's the school where their bus stops right in front of my house to pick up my neighbor's child. And so every day I set my alarm, I'm out on my porch with a sign that says, "Have a good day," and I'm waving to them. And I got to actually see some of the kids up at the Concord. They recognize me. I'm the sign lady. So yay. And then this week, Reed's Ferry was up there. They're 4th graders, and that's an awful lot of fun. It's great to see them. And lastly, this is not really a legislative update, but there are 2 books that have currently been released that I would suggest in all of your spare time that you might read. One is called Exposure. It's written by the lawyer Rob Blott, who he was the lawyer in the movie The Devil We Know. It's about the PFAS lawsuit in West Virginia where he sued DuPont. And it's a memoir, so it's from his side of the story, and it's absolutely fascinating. The other book is called Troubled Water, and it's just a a book about, the first chapter is PFAS, but it's about the water infrastructure and the water situation in the United States. It's a little more sort of research-oriented. Again, it's fascinating, and I think it's very topical. So that's it for me.
Okay, thanks.
Any
Bill,
question?
you had a
Oh, I'm
question?
sorry.
Yeah, just going back to that bowling alley, how are they able to get away with that with the Shoreline Protection Act? Because the Shoreline Protection Act is very specific in terms of when trees are being removed. I mean, to me, it's overregulation. That's my editorial comment. But DES has to go in there and specifically tell them what trees you can remove and what trees you can't remove. So it sounds like somebody's not being compliant with shoreline protection, so.
Well, there's supposed to be a 50-foot buffer
Right.
of tree line and vegetation, but what's happening is, and we saw some pictures today, is they're clear cutting the trees and then they're bringing in invasive, not invasive, but foreign species like grass, like the grass that we put on our lawns. That doesn't really necessarily belong around lakes, but they're getting around it by saying that there's vegetation there.
And then the other comment was, I'm kind of surprised regarding the special education issue regarding the doctors, because in my past experience, whether you have a 504 or an IEP, there's generally a medical report that is attached to that child's folder. So that would automatically be updated as a condition changed or updated yearly because they got to go get their wellness visits. So the concept that a parent has to go to a doctor's office every month to get sign off for a particular type of treatment, whether it's whether it's aphasia or tactile issues or what have you, is stunning, to be perfectly candid with you.
You're not alone in that. I mean, there's a lot of confusion over this law. There's a lot of, it's not a law, it's a ruling. It's an emergency ruling. And I guess it was based on, a school somewhere. I mean, this is what they're telling me. Somebody who is not certified provided the services that were then billed. Well, then penalize that school.
Exactly.
Don't
Exactly.
penalize the whole rest of the state.
Exactly.
It's
No,
crazy.
you're right.
And everybody who works with children, everybody who works with kids who have special ed, everyone who is an advocate is fighting this tooth and nail.
Really defies logic, Wendy.
It does, and I agree with you on that one.
Lon, you had a question?
Yes, I do, Representative. And it kind of parallels what Bill was querying about. When you talk about needing I forget what you said, something of the arts, practitioner of the arts,
Practitioner of the arts.
to sign off, does that includes medical issues as well as mental issues?
So a practitioner of the arts is a certified, somebody who is certified in their field. So it would be a certified counselor or a certified speech pathologist or a certified occupational therapist. So they would never sign off on a medical or they would never sign off on a medical condition.
And I think that's my confusion, and I think it's
Okay.
simple confusion.
Yeah,
that
no.
can be simple at times.
So these are for auxiliary services. So, but they're certified. I mean, they've gone to school for this. They're experts in their field, and they might say, this child needs speech therapy twice a week, and they try twice a week, and they say, you know what, I really think they need it 3 times a week. Well, now the parent has to not only go once a month, they've got to go back to the physician to get it signed, because now you've got a change in the IEP. And I've had kids with IEPs, and they're fluid in design, because the kids, you try something and it may or may not work, and so you try something else, or you increase it or you decrease it. So it's devastating. It would be devastating to Merrimack. It would be devastating to all children who receive services in New Hampshire.
Can I follow?
Yes, please.
Representative Trotter, is that bill?
Representative Dick Berry spoke at the school board meeting, and he read a letter, and I left it up to him. We kind of pick and choose our battles. I would like to ask you to refer to him Representative Dick Barry, because he's more well-versed and he can tell you the other side. I know it, if I can remember correctly, I think she said it though, there was non-medical personnel making decisions for IEPs, and that could lead to litigation. So I think there was something involved at the federal level that scared them into making that ruling. But I'm the wrong person to ask.
Okay.
My daughter's
Thank
a
you
speech
both.
pathologist, and the doctors, they might refer him to a speech pathologist, but my daughter, as the speech pathologist, makes the decisions.
Exactly.
It's not the physician or the
Exactly.
doctor's job to do that. So that's why none of it makes sense tonight, right now, to me.
That's right.
Right.
It's, somehow I feel like we're not getting the whole story, but.
So it's called
but I'm sure we're
Medicaid to
getting-
School, and
Yeah.
there's a DHHS emergency ruling. So you can look it up, yeah.
Okay. Peter, you had a question you wanted to bring
It's
forward,
actually not a question.
or a comment?
I kind of wanted to direct it at the representatives, and please don't take this comment directed at either one of you in particular. I love the fact that we're seeing all our reps are coming in and talking to us and giving us legislative updates. Very happy about that. I think it's awesome. I think you're all up there working hard. I guess what I don't want to be rude, but could do without is, and Janine, just because you were here tonight, but I really don't care what Chris Sununu's approval rating is. I'm interested in, like you were talking about the carbon bill, and you're involved in that, and I want to hear your opinion on that because you're representing us. And, and Wendy's involved in her respective, I want to hear your opinions on that, especially how it affects us. This is one man's opinion on this council, but really that's, you're both up here. We've got all our other reps. Like you just mentioned, Dick Barry's going to come in and talk about an issue. That's awesome. I think that's great. But just one constructive criticism, that's all. But the question I did want to ask is, I was reading in the paper today, there's a law they're working on up there regarding DWI and people climbing over their seats, sleeping in their back seats.
Yes.
Okay? One, I liked your opinions on it because I'm gonna give you an opinion from a law enforcement officer. This law is useless. There's already Supreme Court rulings on it. Judges have already, the New Hampshire Supreme Court has already ruled on when a person's in their backseat sleeping. And in my personal opinion is, our officers on the street have used good discretion when they've found somebody sleeping in the back of their car. By approving a law like this, and I'm asking you to take my opinion maybe, and take it for what it's worth, but by approving a law like this, you grant more loopholes, you cause more problems for prosecutors in the state, for DWIs, in and of itself. So, when we have to have a specific law that says, if they're in their backseat sleeping, there's already the Supreme Court has already ruled on that. So this is just extraneous laws.
What was the ruling?
Huh?
What was the ruling? Are they allowed to sleep in the back seat?
If you can't arrest somebody for DWI if they're in their backseat sleeping, the engine shut off.
And
They're seeking
so
shelter.
I just glanced at the article. I didn't read it, so I thought
Yeah.
it didn't pass. I thought that's
It
what.
didn't, but they're bringing it back for review, and I'm thinking, why are we wasting time on this? It's already been ruled on. So I'd be, and maybe,
So, but I'm confused. Do you think people should be allowed to sleep in the back seat to sleep it off?
no, what it is officers have encountered people pulled off on the side of the road. Car shut off, their engine's off, they're in their back seat asleep. The purpose is they, at some point, made the right decision to get off the road.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court has said that's not DWI, you're not in operation of your vehicle. Okay.
So
But they want to create a law saying that, it's just more extraneous laws that we don't need. So if it does come across your desk, keep that in mind, that's all I'm asking. That I think it's a useless law. When the
Peter,
Supreme-
for our
I think-
benefit, can you help explain, you keep saying you don't like the law, but so they're trying to, there's a law that's being considered
Yeah, it was in the
to-
union leader, it got kicked back, I think, to committee, and
it was retained, I believe, because if
Same.
they're working on it now, that's a retained bill.
Did it say that you could sleep in the back? It was just
well, it
saying,
does, yeah, it said that.
so that's the point, it's redundant, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's exactly, I'm sorry if I didn't, But it was kind of, I was just shocked that that law would even be coming out, why we need it, you know? So that's my opinion on that, but thanks for listening.
I actually spoke with two other representatives about that bill this afternoon, and it doesn't have my support.
Thank you, and thank you, and just if it comes across both of your desks, whatever.
Well, if you think that's a law that's not needed, how about the one that's still on the books that it's still, to this day, illegal to play a movie on the train on a Sunday?
Well, yeah.
And then there's collecting the seaweed at night.
Okay, let's not
Set.
go any further down that road. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just wanted to take a minute during this section to point out that I've had several conversations with Representative Dick Hench over the past few weeks, partly because of going up to Concord to talk on SB 300, but he just wanted me to relay to people that specifically with respect to traffic, he's been meeting with the governor last week and even today or yesterday, and is hoping to have a meeting in Concord with Commissioner Sheehan and the governor, myself, and maybe another counselor to talk about the traffic issues going on here in Merrimack and how the governor's office could react to it or respond to it, relative specifically to the turnpike widening, the intersections from 10, 11, and 12, the impacts that those tolls are having on traffic on DW Highway, everything that has to do with the entire length of the turnpike. Pardon? Noise barriers, all of those traffic issues, and so he's working on trying to get that meeting set up to try and make sure that, at least at the top level, they're getting the same answers and hearing the same things. The other thing that I understand he's talking about is a meeting, again, only this time down here in Merrimack, and I alluded to it earlier with Don. Don has sent in some questions to the governor relative to how is the state and the governor's office responding to the water contamination issues and things like that. And so he's trying to bring the governor down here along with Commissioner Scott and Clark to meet with the town officials with MVD and be able to make sure that that's as clear as can be in reviewing the situation where it's at. Some of the questions are, why is Merrimack Village District having to foot a $20 million or $24 million bill to clean up PFAS, and what's the state doing to help out and things of that nature. So there's a lot of stuff going on. He did have commitments. He couldn't come in and talk to us tonight, but just wanted people to know that there is a lot of stuff going on at the State House level to try and help Merrimack in the issues that we're facing here. Any other questions or comments?
Yes,
We're looking for somebody else, Tom.
I was gonna say, I'm happy to participate if nobody else doesn't want to participate.
Either or, I'd be
So-
able to, just need some notice.
Okay. I'm hoping it's gonna be in the next couple of weeks,
Okay.
but it's, everybody's schedule needs to mesh to make it work out. Pardon? We're gonna keep it small, so I will do that. We'll figure out how we're gonna handle that. But okay. That brings us to the town manager's report.
I don't have anything of great import to tell you tonight to prolong the meeting, so thank you.
Question.
Any questions for the town manager?
Question.
Bill?
When do we get to see your budget?
We haven't even begun the budget process.
Okay.
So I don't,
Typically, it's in December,
Paul
right?
knows.
I mean,
Typically, I just,
yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
gonna need to start it soon.
We're shooting for the 5th, but it'll probably be more like the 19th.
I could use a fifth about now. Oh,
So that is the goal, is to have it either the 5th or the 19th.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Tom Koenig, unplugged. Wow. Wow, that's a rarity.
any more questions for the town manager? We're getting there. We have to get through, there's no consent agenda for, back to old business. And number 3, Captain Eric Marquis and the High Visibility Mobilization Patrols Grant Acceptance. The town to consider the acceptance and expenditure of a grant in the amount of $4,160 made available through the New Hampshire Office of Highway Safety for the Merrimack Police Department for, quote, high visibility mobilization patrols, unquote, pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15. Captain, thanks for your patience. We really do appreciate
No
it.
problem.
And this has gone on longer than we anticipated, but, and this is a smaller amount grant, which is why it didn't fall into the public hearings. Because I guess 10,000 is the limit. We need to have a public hearing if we go up that high.
Yes.
So, what would you like to tell us about?
Well, this is a new grant for us. It's basically broken up into 4 different sections. The total is $4,160, but there's 4 initiatives within that. And for all these initiatives, all departments in the state that receive this grant have specific times and dates to do these details. So everybody does the detail at the same time. So it's a statewide initiative for the same date and time. The first is Operation Safe Commute, which the total is $3,120, which addresses efforts to enhance awareness and importance of safe driving during commuting hours. We did have this grant last year. It actually fell under the STEP grant last year, which was $2,551. We had 12 patrols, 116 motor vehicle stops, issued 95 warnings, 20 summonses, and had 1 arrest. The second part is Join the Click detail, which is a seatbelt violation initiative. It's a small amount, $260. It's basically 1 detail. We did have it last year under the STEP as well. Last year was $377. We had 2 patrols, 5 warnings were issued, and 2 summonses. The third part is a new subsection of this grant, Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over. Again, it's a small amount, it's $520, and that's for the apprehension of impaired drivers. And another new part of this, which is the 4th part, is you drive, you text, you pay. And the award is $260. That's for the enforcement of hands-free electronic device law as well as other distracted behaviors behind the wheel. Gets complicated.
So these sound like there's a lot of overlap in them.
Yeah.
Like the drive sober or get pulled over. Is it just because they want to have all across the state at the same time?
They're calling them a
Doing that.
mobilization. That's exactly it. Yeah. Same time, same date, same time. So everybody's doing it together. At least the police departments that did get the grant. So
Now, is this going to be publicized and stuff to make it a big deal so that people know this is happening?
a lot of this stuff it gets to our Facebook, and there's different things that we can put out for it.
Just to try and bring up the awareness of people that
I
are
think that's
supposed to
the
wear
idea.
seatbelts and are supposed to do
Yep.
all the right things. Are there any other questions before we open the public hearing? No, it's
There's
in the
no
public
public
hearing. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the town council accept and expend a grant in the amount of $4,160 made available through the New Hampshire Office of Highway Safety for the Merrimack Police Department for high visibility mobilization patrols pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15. Furthermore, the town manager be authorized to sign any documents necessary to accept and expend said grant monies.
Or her proxy?
Or her proxy, thank you. Slipping.
Moved by Bill, seconded by? By Peter. All of these grants have a 25% in-kind match or soft match from the police department. Do we have any issues or troubles with meeting those, or
No.
how do we do that?
Generally, we charge a certain amount for the use of the cruiser and the gas used, which basically comes out to about 25-30%, so it basically covers our match for all grants.
So a soft match?
Soft match, and
If
then
you
there's our time.
Yeah.
That's right, there's administrative costs as well thrown into that, yeah, I forgot about that.
Right. Does that add up to very much time?
Here and
Did it stress or burden your department to do these things?
You got payroll.
Yeah.
We got the reporting that we have to, there's strict reporting that we have to follow. They have forms that we have to fill out, things of that sort. It's not a lot of time on our time, but all that is the soft match. We have to do the payroll whether they work the grant or not, but to say that that's part of it. It's an in-kind, which gets it to that 25%. So it's not like we're going above and beyond. It's just a little extra work that we
I
have
know
to
there
do.
is some reporting requirements for these that does take a little more time and effort, but
Right.
we're not near approaching having to hire somebody to do that
No,
kind of stuff.
not even close. not even
We're
close.
just talking about a couple hours of extra work.
Yeah, not even that. It's maybe 30 seconds for me to sign off on them and probably
Well,
an hour
Don't get
for
too short, or
Xenia.
you won't make your 25% match.
That's right.
Come on. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? One. Any abstaining? So that passes 4-1-0 with Finley in opposition. Which brings us to distracted driving patrols grant acceptance for the Merrimack Police Department. The town council to consider the acceptance and expenditure of a grant in the amount of $5,662 made available through the New Hampshire Office of Highway Safety for the Merrimack Police Department for distracted driving patrols pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15.
So this would allow us to fund 21 4-hour patrols that would focus on enforcing New Hampshire's hands-free electronic device law, as well as other activities that occur behind the wheel of a motor vehicle that could cause the driver to be distracted, to be addressed as negligent driving. Last year, our grant was about the same, $5,665. We had 19 patrols, 161 vehicles stopped, 154 warnings, 27 summonses, and 2 arrests came out of that.
And it focuses on distracted driving, but does it specifically focusing on hands-free driving, or is it?
The way it's written, it's written for both. Distracted driving, the hands-free electronic device law, and then as well as any other, it even says it right in the grant itself, any other activities that occur behind the wheel of a motor vehicle that can cause the driver to be distracted, which would be addressed as negligent driving. So.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments?
One comment, real
Peter?
fast. You know, the one thing about all these grants that we're seeing the captain present is, what that means is, granted, they're on specific patrols looking for specific things, but there's more cops on the street. That's one of the things I like about it is, you know, you have your set amount of sectors, and now you've got an extra car out there. Granted, they're doing other things, but in case of an emergency, and high visibility leads to lower crime rates. It's a proven fact. Thank you.
Yeah, the only concern I have is that they have to be out there on overtime or not a standard time, and so we're actually working people harder or more than what we consider standard time, but they volunteer for it, so they're up for
And
it.
the PD has SOPs regarding how many hours of overtime they're allowed to work because of the fear of having people out there exhausted.
Yeah. Right, there's the safety factor, right? Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify.
Motion hasn't been made, Mr. Chairman.
Could you hurry up?
Yes, I will. Mr. Chairman, I move that the town council accept expend a grant in the amount of $5,662 made available through the New Hampshire Office of Highway Safety for the Merrimack Police Department for distracted driving patrols pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15. Furthermore, that the town manager and/or her proxy be authorized to sign any and/or her proxy be authorized to sign any documents necessary to accept and expend said grant monies.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. If there's no other comments, we'll call the question. It was made by Bill and seconded by Peter. All those in favor of the distracted driving patrols grant signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Opposed. That passes 3-2-0 with Tom Koenig and Finley Rothaus in opposition. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate your
Captain.
patience. Which brings us to approval of minutes from the October 9th Town Council meeting.
Mr. Chairman, move to table the October 9th minutes to November 7th.
Second. Second.
Okay, do you want to talk about, it was seconded by Lon Woods.
It's a non-debatable motion, Mr. Chairman.
Well,
The lateness of the hour is the reason why I'm moving to table.
okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? I guess that passes 5-0. So we'll table the minutes from October 9th to November 7th. Bringing us to comments from the press, comments from the public.
Trying to keep my eyes open. How do you do this for so long? Oh my goodness. Lorraine Allen, 16 French Court. Hi. 3 brief things, because it's very late. One is the DES website has a memo on there about the meeting on November 5th. And I want it to be on record. I don't know who watches these meetings on videos, but maybe somebody does, because the meeting is a week from Tuesday. So what they are doing is they are having the air permit hearing. And I don't know if the public is really aware that we have to remember 3.5 years ago we were told about this problem. The source was the air stacks, right? So it's really important for people to come out. If they don't know what to say, just say whatever they think. Those statements are going to be on record to the state. So I really would encourage our community to come and say anything they want to. It'll be on record. It'll be entered as a public comment. Because if we don't give our opinions of what we think about the air stacks and the need for permitting, who's going to speak for us, right? That's number one.
Right. Let me just
yes.
kind of amplify that. The meeting is at 5:30. It's not at 7 o'clock. It's not here. It's over at
5:30?
JMU's.
Oh, DES site says 6 p.m. So we'll have to, yeah.
Well, it's not at 7, so
All right. So if you look on the DES, nhds.gov,
Uh-huh.
on the PFAS information page, there'll be a memo there, and it'll say it. So I would think that that would be current, but you never know, right? So, yeah, but that's the
yeah, I
latest.
thought
Like
Clark
Dawn
had
was
been the one
referring to the
asking for the
email.
earlier
If you
timeframe.
sign up
He
for
was.
emails, they
He
send
was
you
driving that.
updates. So originally it was early. I saw that,
Yeah.
When you were talking about it, it was early. And then when they posted it at the beginning of this month, October 8th, I believe was the date, it was listed at 6 p.m. So that's what that's about. So it's really
Okay.
important for people
It's
to
an
just
important
make their
meeting.
statements so they hear what we think about that, because the air is what leads to the rest of the contamination in the community. Yes, there's discharge issues, and that is all being looked at. So that's number one. 2 is the second part of that meeting is indeed an investigation update. It does say that in that memo. So they're doing both. So I don't want people to think if they don't really have anything to say about the air, they don't know what to say or how to say, they may not come to the meeting. So the second part of the meeting will be an update on the investigation, and the public will indeed have the opportunity to ask whatever questions they want directly, which is always a good thing, because then we tape those and people watch them and they can get accurate information instead of neighbor to neighbor is pretty good these days. People are giving good information overall. So that's, I just wanted to clarify that, just in case, people are watching this, that they know that, because getting information out, people don't read the papers anymore, where do we get that information out? So that's number one.
That was
Number
number
two.
that was
Yeah.
your second point.
Well, you were talking about, interesting, Bill, when you were talking about earlier, do we have Saint-Gobain come here and talk? So if a few people are talking or more people are talking, who knows about the process, I think you said, for transparency. I'm amazed at how many people are reading social media and how many people know this information now. So that is, I hate it. I really do. But it really is where people are getting their information, at least in this demographic. So the DHHS meeting, I want to make a request. When you speak to them and ask them to come out, and I'll probably email them tomorrow, but they may say that they can't do that. DHHS, any guidance they give us in Merrimack is going to be only what's on the federal sites in CDC and ADSTR, which we know is dated. That's all they can do. And they may very well say, well, we don't really know until the 6-year study is done, whatever they may say. So I would suggest, see if they'll do this for our community's sake. Jonathan Ali and Mary Bucco were hired by DES to do the MCL process, to rigorously look at the science. He's an epidemiologist. She's a, let's see if I get it right, human health risk assessor. They're amazing. They're brilliant. They needed to be able to defend this science, which they certainly can. The science will never be questioned. I fully believe that. But they are very informed on this issue as to the impacts to human health. So it's a little tricky right now. They're hired by DES, and I understand why, and it's a great thing. They're keeping them on, even though that process is over, because they feel it's valuable, because this issue isn't going away in the world probably, right? Not just Merrimack. So if they could be asked to maybe partner with DHHS, they have more current information, and they're very sensible, and they're very, very good. They're very good with this information.
Jonathan Ali, ALI, and Mary Bukow, BUKOW. So he is the state. So when we turn to DHHS, right, that's where we originally looked for our guidance. And back in that meeting in May 2016, all they could pull up was 3 slides, which said some things that I wasn't too pleased with. But, and that's who's suing the state of New Hampshire. Interestingly enough, it's quite a process, isn't it? So I think if they could partner with DES, because Karen Craven is part of a information educational group that I'm working with there and Wendy's doing that also, trying to create some materials for the state so people can have some information, just basic information, they can get that out there. So I would make that suggestion coming from you. And what was the third thing? Oh, the meetings. My understanding in talking with St. Gobain, I know some of you know that I held a meeting, a month or so ago, because I love this town to death, but I get so frustrated when people make things that affect all of us, political matters. I don't like it on either side of the issue. I don't care what party people are from. This issue, Citizens for Clean Water, I have really held firm to the fact that we have a whole spectrum of political beliefs. I spent most of Sunday afternoon with Representative Hinch. We shared a lot of jokes. He was there, for the protests. We talk on a regular basis. So in speaking with St. Gobain directly, which I've done for a while, I'll take support, wherever it comes from. And I think people are coming together on this issue overall. There's been some pushback over in the last week or two, especially since bottled water went out. A lot of people have been very nasty. Publicly, all of a sudden, there were things said a few days ago that were just horrific things said about people, so I don't know where that's coming from. Things said neighbor to neighbor, things said on social media when people put out information to help people who were asking about where can I get my water tested. I have a private well. People were informing them accurately. Why are some people getting bottled water and some aren't? Some very, very hostile and profane, actually. I reported to a moderator, which I've never ever done before. I really believe in free speech and dialogue and hearing each other. So I don't know what's happening there. We have to just watch out for that, I think, and make sure that everybody knows everyone's respectful. So in talking with St. Gobain, my impression was when they were going to reach out to the town, which is the first place to reach out to, they were going to ask more, who do you think should be there for various parties and stakeholders to get your input after that. I would suggest a school board member, because with the filtration of the schools, they're really maybe having something to say here. One of the river keepers, Nelson or someone, who do the Merrimack Riverside Council, because they've been very involved in that. So I would pass those names on myself, but I think if we were on the same page, I don't think they'll say no. In crafting the agenda is really, they're really not asking you to craft the agenda and say, what do you guys want to do here? They're asking more for your talking points. Because the letter that I crafted had some they weren't really combative, inflammatory talking points. They were ones that the majority of residents over the last few months have talked about socially, publicly, and at meetings. And in my opinion, all people can agree on those 6 asks. That's where they came from. And the meeting we had with various political leaders in this town and stuff, some of those issues came up. So I think it's really about, if you have anything that you would like to be on that agenda, that's what they're asking for. I don't know how that was communicated to you and the person who came to see you, but my understanding in talking with Dina was that the reach out would be here, and they would craft, what people wanted to be. They've heard from the letter, what we're kind of wanting to talk about, and they want to hear what you want to talk about, and you know what that is, because you had some communication going back and forth to them. I also offered to Sarita that I will follow up with her. There are some scientists and presenters at many conferences across the country that have talked about this issue of the PTFE that's being made right now. And it is my understanding from science that, in fact, PFOA is not being used, but it does show up, and it will increase, as we see in Wells 2, because of issues with precursors and various chemical compounds that literally, the simple explanation, because the explanation is, I couldn't do it, it's just very scientific, is that there's a transformation that happens, and in water it happens relatively quickly. So it's the belief of some of these experts that Wells 2 has showed a steady presence, as Dawn have said, of PFBS and PFA in particular. Those numbers are increasing. They're not regulated. Those are considered in the category that actually does some transforming or morphing. Anybody who's listening to this, who's a science person, forgive me, I don't have it quite right. But there is a transformation that happens, and this is something that I think we have to get some advice on from whoever that would be. So I offered to get some resources and connect them with Sarita, since she's looking at that, if that's okay with you. If anybody else wants that information, just let me know. It's, you know, I've gone to a lot of conferences. I've seen a lot of scientists present on this issue. Everybody is in agreement in the science community as to why this is happening. It came out of Notre Dame originally, a man called Dr. Graham Peasley, who has this magical machine, mass spectrometer or something, and the issue was the fire gear originally. The question was, if PFOA was decreased and outlawed, why was fire gear still full of it? And why hasn't that gone down in the brand new turnout gear? So a firefighter's wife, who now lives in New Hampshire, led that everywhere. So his research showed this issue of precursors. He has a paper that's just come out, and other scientists have duplicated that. And that will be something as a nation we have to look at, because as we change chemical formulation, because to make PTFE, which is Teflon, it needs to be strong, it needs to do the job that they have contracts for. And they can't just do this with anything, so they have to figure out how to do it. So I think that's why we're seeing, in my opinion, I'm a social worker, I'm not a scientist, social scientist, I guess, but I think that's why we're seeing the increase in PFOA. That's my general understanding of it, and it's not necessarily just based on, I came up with this theory. It is based on papers, it is based on webinars and scientific conferences that are happening, that it would be really nice maybe to get somebody from the town or the state to attend some of those. DES, I think, is familiar with this research. I've talked with them about it, but it doesn't seem like they're really forthcoming with you, and maybe they're in a tough situation because they have to negotiate on behalf of private well owners. I don't know. So that's my spiel, and if anyone wants to meet up at any time, off the record or sitting in your office or something, you can ask me all the questions you want, or I can give you some resources and information there if it can help.
Great, thank you.
Okay?
Eileen, did you have a question or a comment?
It's late, I know. I
It
was
is
like, am I
getting
going to
late.
remember
I
to say these
appreciate
three
it.
things?
Thank you very
All
much.
right, okay, trying to help.
Any other public comment? Being the only other public here. Comments from the council? Seeing none.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn has been made and seconded by Bill and Peter. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstaining? That passes 5-0-0. Thank you very much.